Hey, everybody, this is Alex Lindsay sitting in for Leo. We've got Andy Anako, Adam Angst, and Megan Maroney here, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about a recap of the Apple event. We're also going to talk about the updates, which just were released yesterday, and we're going to figure out why Apple is deleting some people's movies right here on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 628, recorded on September 18th, 2018. Good people doing bad things.
MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by FreshBooks, the ridiculously easy-to-use cloud accounting software helping small business owners thrive. Try it free for 30 days at freshbooks.com/MacBreak. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Introducing Rate Shield Approval. If you're in the market to buy a home, Rate Shield Approval locks up your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. It's a real game changer. Learn more and get started at rocketmortgage.com/MacBreak. And by ZipRecruiter. Hiring is challenging, but there's one place you can go where hiring is simple and smart. That place is ZipRecruiter, where growing businesses connect to qualified candidates. Try it free at ziprecruiter.com/MacBreak. Welcome to MacBreak Weekly. I am not Leo. I think we always say that. We have to make sure that you're clear that the person you're listening to is not Leo. This is Alex Lindsay, and I am sitting in for Leo as he continues to enjoy his trip. I don't know where he is. He's somewhere in Europe, having a good time, I'm sure, and not listening to the show. Hopefully. So anyway, but I'm joined here coming in from Boston, Andy Anako. Hey, Andy.
Hi.
Hello, Andy.
Statistically speaking, aren't most of us not Leo? Unless the listeners' names are Leo. I'm just saying that's a very good safe guess to make.
That's good. Also coming in from Ithaca, New York, we've got Adam Angst from Tidbits. Hey, Adam.
Again, not Leo. Glad to be here.
Good. And joining us for her debut, Megan Maroney.
The long ban on me being on MacBreak is over. It was lifted. Thank you. Also, definitely don't tell Leo this. But yes, thank you for having me.
Exactly. I was like, Leo's not here. Let's put Megan on.
Oh, Megan, there are so many things we're not going to be telling Leo about.
I know.
We'll just add that to the pile.
We just have to take over.
Like the number of times I used the word buttocks during the show.
So we're now a week out. We've had almost a week since the big event. And we've had a little time to think about it, a little time to research. Now, it looks like the iPhone XR, as announced, is going to be taking a little while longer to get to us. Andy, is this a marketing thing, or is it a technical issue as far as getting the XR out?
10
on time?
Yeah,
10R.
Okay. First of all, I think I proved canonically last week that because Apple declined to release a phone called the iPhone XIII, they released an iPhone number 8 that we must be intended to say the letter X in iPhone X. So I will stick to my guns here and say that, well, anytime you hear a theory that this is a shortage or a delay or something like this is marketing bravado from Apple, and Apple is the one company that doesn't need to market anything. They could actually have the middle finger and the poop emoji hanging in the front of all of their store windows and the doors closed, and people would still be lining up to get iPhones. So they're using what they're calling a brand new display technology for the LCD and the less expensive iPhone X, and so it's not unlikely that they're having problems with usually the problem with the new display is yields, where they can make them but they're throwing out a lot more than they thought they were going to have to. So the rumor is that they're going to be delayed a little bit. And so that's okay. That really is the phone that kind of everybody wants, and I know that's the one that I'm interested in. I've had a week to look more into this, and I still can't figure out why I personally would buy the XS over the XR unless I really just wanted that extra the stainless steel case, and I wanted the OLED screen. I'd much rather have the banana yellow. I'd much rather have the banana yellow phone, frankly, than the better screen and the stainless steel.
Really, the banana yellow?
Yes, absolutely. The banana yellow.
Banana yellow is pretty cool. But the
I just
real
keep
thing
looking
is-
at it. I was like, who's going to buy that phone?
That was my question. Now we know.
Anybody who wants to answer the phone by saying banana phone, go. Or go for banana phone.
You know, you can now use it. You could use it for banana for scale. Because you could just set it out there and it'd be actually more
2x
accurate than a regular banana.
So seriously, Andy, 2x zoom doesn't mean anything to you. 2x optical zoom.
Because it's given that the main camera is still going to be is identical to the main camera on the other one, that I still will have 3D face. The fact that they will still be able to at least fake the best of the fake 2-lens f-stop features in the cheaper one. It's not a small amount. You're not saving a small amount of money here by going for the cheaper phone. And even if you do have iPhone XS. I'll just to be kind, I'll say the iPhone XS. Even if you do have iPhone XS money, I would still be saying, well, why not buy the cheaper phone but max it out for storage? Because I'm probably going to have a lot more a lot more use in my life to make sure that I could shoot 4K video as long as I want, as opposed to I'll get that second camera, which it's going to be nice, but it's still you're still dealing with one of the best cameras, even with digital zoom, you can find. So again, it's not a small amount of money. $250. That's a lot of money.
So you're going for the 10R. Adam, where are you landing?
Well, so I have a 10, and honestly, I'm not doing anything. It just when I look at the differences, of course. I mean, I don't know. Maybe everyone else noticed this too. Every time Apple has to say, "This is the best iPhone. This is the fastest iPhone.
We were
this is the
talking
best."
about it on the launch. I was like, well, if it wasn't, why would we be here?
Did you say?
Why would we be talking?
Come on, of course it's the best iPhone. It better damn well be.
Exactly.
So I have the iPhone 10, and I like the cameras, and I like the screen, although my eyes are at 50, not so good, so I can't actually see the screen hardly at all. So I'm not doing anything. If I were forced to buy a new phone, I would probably get the 10R. And I'm going to try very hard to say 10R and 10S and 10S Max, even though, man, it's hard. It just looks like XS and XR, and
it feels like you're living in XS. When you buy it. I mean, it's just.
It's one thing. It's one thing when it was 8S and 4S and 5S and all that. Because it was a number and a letter. That was easy. Once you go to a Roman numeral and a number, that's asking for too much. And particularly when you put the word Max in there, because it's extra small Max. And what does that mean?
Well, the question really is: are we going to go to XI next year? That's the.
Hey, next year it better go to 11. That's all I have to say.
Yes.
We already know what it's going to be. We took it to we turned it all the way to 11. I mean, it's
gotta be.
We already know where that's going. Are you thinking of upgrading?
Yes, I now if I were paying for it, I would get the 10R in blue because I would like a colored iPhone. But I'm not paying for it. Leo is, so I decided to get the most expensive. So I got the 10S Max.
With 512 gig.
Yes, exactly. Of course. No, actually, I've gotten. I think my 10 is 512. The 10 went to 512, right? No. Okay. Okay. So this was 256, and I don't even ever get close to it. So I think I stayed at 256 because that's what he did too. If he had gone to 512, I might have gone to 512. And he ordered the gold, so then I didn't order the golds. I ordered the space gray. But then the guy at the Apple store said it might not be here by Friday. So then I said, any color you want is fine. Because you just put a case on it anyway. So it can, it doesn't really matter. So yes, but if I were paying, I would get the 10R. And I've heard of, that we talked a little bit about how they were aiming the 10R at kids. I would never buy my children, because it's still almost $800.
Yeah,
right. They're happy with the leftover phones or the SE. But I don't. So I'm not exactly sure who is going to buy those 10R ones besides Andy.
I would just like to note for the drinking game, you were the first one to say iPhone SE. Just bringing that out.
Is that on the drinking game? I am a big fan of the SE. I bought 2 of them this year.
Everyone is a big fan of the SE, and Apple will not update it, and people are saying, well, it must not have sold that well. We don't know. Apple hasn't said. Maybe it was because they were trying to make it small and cheap.
Well, I don't know. I think Apple also
says about the SE.
I think that Apple also has a issue where they already have a lot of phones now. Like if you think about the different sizes and the different they have the 7, the 8, the 10R, the 10S, the 10, and so they already have this wide range, and it's just how many are you going to keep on selling, and how many VABs are you running, and so on and so forth. So I think that makes sense. I think to me anyway. I have to admit I'm probably going to get the Max, and then I was going to get the black, but then the space gray or whatever. Mm-hmm. But then I realized I'm from Pittsburgh, and black and gold is how often do you get to get a phone that's black and gold? And so I think that I'm probably going to get black.
Go Bruins! All right.
I'm not.
Penguins.
No, Penguins is okay. Penguins is okay. Pirates is okay. Steelers okay. Bruins not. No, that's not.
I thought you were saying black and gold. That's. Okay, I'm sorry. My mistake. It would have been nice for them to keep like the smallest size, the classic iPhone size. It would have been a nice statement for them to say we will have one really small phone for people with small hands or people with small pockets.
Well, there is some discussion. Let me know what you think of it. There is some Megan. This is discuss for you. What have you seen the concept that it is a gender biased because the phone is too large? There was an article I think in the New York Times yesterday talking about women saying that it's a gender bias because the phone is too big for their small hands.
Everything is a gender bias, first of all. Let's get but I put the phone in my purse. I'm never putting the phone in the pocket, so I could have I could use my iPad as a phone because I carry a purse. I think it's actually you guys are the ones that are left out in the cold because it's not as accepted for you to carry a giant bag. So maybe it's a gender bias the other way because we put everything in our purse that we want. Whatever size phone you want, give me.
But my wife Tanya is absolutely irate about this because she hates purses. She doesn't like to carry purses. She sees no reason why she should be bogged down with this stupid bag all the time. And so she has a phone that she has the 6S, and she is unhappy with its size. And we actually were, for testing reasons, brought in an old iPhone 5S and sort of reset it up with iOS 12 and everything. And I swear, if it didn't have a broken camera, she would probably be using that phone right now.
Interesting. Yeah, my wife has the 8S, the 8 Plus, and she puts it in her back pocket. I'm always like, you're going to break that screen, and I just keep on saying it, but she just keeps on putting it in the back pocket, and it hasn't been a problem for her so far. But she's very small hands. I don't think that would be the issue, but a lot of it's been around how hard it is to hold with a larger hand. And I will admit the thing that I like about the current 10 is that I can operate it with one hand. If I go back to the Max, I know that I'm going back to two hands because I can't really get to everything, even as a man. It's challenging. So anyway, Tim Cook talked a lot about he had some interviews. He was talking about iPhone pricing, dual SIM support. Adam, why do you think that we are only seeing dual SIM support in China?
I think that's not true, though. We are seeing dual SIM support.
Physical support.
Right.
Two physical
supports. I don't understand Chinese carriers, but my understanding is that Apple's eSIM technology doesn't work in China or isn't allowed in China for some reason.
The question is why can't we have it all, everywhere?
I would assume that it's just more expensive to manufacture. Right, to have, that's anything you do in the iPhone that's physical, you've got to know there's trade-offs and issues with. And so if you can have only one SIM slot and do the other one with eSIM, that seems like a fine thing. Is there a reason why not having a second SIM slot is more of a problem? I mean, I've only once wanted a second SIM. That was when we were traveling in England.
Well, second SIM, I travel a lot overseas, and so having multiple SIMs is a big deal. It is exciting for me, is being able to actually be able to keep two SIMs in the phone and have a local phone number and a international phone number.
And you can't do that with eSIM?
It's also
you can. Go ahead, Andy.
Well, number one, eSIM is not just Apple's standard. It's an emerging standard that Apple wants, that Apple is getting behind. They've got most of the U.S. carriers behind it. It's not I don't believe it's a worldwide standard yet, but it's going to be. As to why I believe that Apple is really willing to tailor things to specifically to the Chinese market. When you have two physical SIMs, that allows you to have a lot more flexibility in how you interact with different carriers. And it's not just China and the U.S. either. There are a lot of places where people will have two different carriers. One because one which will give them cheap data, another one which will give them cheap voice and cheap text. And in some parts of the world, if you do, traveling doesn't just mean going 3,000 miles to another continent. It could mean just going about 500 miles, and suddenly you need to have a second account on a second service to make this work. And I don't know why they're limiting it to just China. I would guess that it's because that dual tray is harder to manufacture, more expensive to manufacture. I'm going to guess. It gives them less space to remove, to continue to thumb their nose at people who want to use actual physical headphone jacks. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was they had some conversations with certain officials in China, and they said, we are not ready to sign on to the eSIM standard yet. And if you could give us two separate SIMs, that'd be great. Most of the phones that I get out of China for either for review or the cheap ones that I buy just because they're weird happen to have two SIMs. So that's kind of what the people are expecting over there.
And it sounds like if you're traveling overseas, I mean, I guess the way I'm looking at approaching it is that I'll probably have the eSIM be my local phone number, and then I just have an empty slot that I'm going to use for the other number. Does anyone know how it manages data between two SIMs? Like, is it something you choose what services?
It's a different plan. I know that. You can have a separate plan.
But you have a separate plan. But like if I have a T-Mobile plan and an AT&T plan, which is it going to use for text versus data? Do we know how that is?
It depends on for phone calls, whatever it will basically present as whatever number is incoming. I believe that in terms of which data plan you're going to use, if you've got two accounts that have availability of two different data services, it's kind of like being able to choose between two different hotspots, so to speak. You'll in terms of mobile data, you'll be able to choose between two different services that are available to you. That's my understanding, at least for general eSIM use.
Got it. And then
I don't have one of these new phones yet, so I can only extrapolate from what I know from the companies that give me phones.
Do we think that this is the big push that eSIMs needs to move forward, is to have Apple like USB was before?
Yeah, I mean, because they were using it in the series in the Apple Watch and the iPad Pro up to this point, or the iPad up to this point. So it's not like it's completely new, and but putting it in the iPhone just radically increases adoption.
Right.
Yeah. Also, carriers love it because it makes it really easy to when you're trying to sell somebody who's not bound to a contract. Hey, switch to our plan. Here's how much money you can get. There will be no, hey, now you have to go to one of our stores to pick up a physical SIM, or we'll mail you a physical SIM. A lot of the eSIM stuff is here is a QR code. Just scan that QR code, and the phone will figure out all the rest. So this is why the carriers are really, really, really happy about it, because they are really now fighting each other to get. They're signed up everybody they're going to sign up in the U.S., and so they want to sign up other people's existing accounts.
Now, one of the other things that Tim talked about was the fact that, when they're talking about pricing, he said, well, we find that we want to keep on innovating, and there's some people willing to pay for that. So we're going to keep going down that path. Do we see this kind of this fork? Megan, do you see this fork of the R and the S, or where we're going to start seeing it fork off, where the S keeps on becoming more and more expensive, or that version, and the R kind of tries to maintain this price of about $750?
Yeah, or at least that gap in price between what the most expensive is. I do think, because there are some people that just want a brand new phone, right, and they'll continue to pay $300 less than what the most expensive phone is. Yeah, I think they saw how many people bought the 10. They weren't, a lot of people were like, no one's going to buy that, but it had a lot of adoption.
Right.
And so I think that they will continue to have this sort of lower end, because very few people really can tell the difference between OLED and an LED screen and LCD screen. And I think there's other few things. I think they've figured out the things that people will want, don't need, and that they can reduce the price for that reason.
I think that the quality difference between the R and the S is much smaller than the 8 to the 10. Does that make sense, Adam?
Yeah, it does. And I will say, though, that I found it a little disingenuous when Tim Cook was talking about how, they're interested in the XR to make it more affordable for people and things like that. This is still not a cheap phone. I mean, it's more than the 8 was before, and it's just it's a $750 phone to start with. So it does feel as though Apple is just pushing everything up in terms of what we're willing to pay. I mean, I think it was Jason Snell who used the boiling frog example. It just keeps getting a little hotter, and we don't really notice. Oh yeah, iPhones were always $1,000. You don't really think about it.
And I have been paying $1,000. I mean, Leo has been paying $1,000 for my iPhones for several versions because you get the most, the most space. So my 7 was over $1,000 because I had, 256, I think, and so was the 8, and then so was the 10, and so now it's like that is how the boiling frog works. Like $1,500 doesn't seem like that much, or it wasn't 15. It was.
And I have to admit, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2,000. 3 or 4 years from now, and one of the things that we've seen is that, and also if you look at the stats, I think there was someone posted stats to show that the iPhone processors now are about as fast as some of the, are getting very close to the fast of some of the bottom end MacBooks. So, I think that so you're looking at stats there and speeds and capacity that is starting to the MacBook Pro 13 not being possibly that much more powerful, and probably by A13, A14, we're probably going to see a point where you are buying a computer, that just happens to be really small.
I think we are talking about the difference between like iPhone consumers and all other kinds of consumers, where people who love iPhones, one of the reasons why is because they can appreciate both the real intangible and the ethereal stylistic advantages of having this sort of phone, and so they're sort of willing to go for that. Everybody else, they're the frogs who jump out of the iPhone pot and jump into the Android pot, where the heat is called the lack of privacy, but it costs a lot less money. And so same pot, different sort of stress level. What I do like is that now I don't think the minimum buy-in for an iPhone is now under $500. If you want to walk into an Apple store and walk out with a new device that runs iOS for the least amount of money, now that phone is now it's a 2-year-old phone now, but it will still cost you under $500, which is not something they had before. And yes, this is 2-year-old technology, or 2 or 3. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on what year it was released, but you're talking about a couple of the previous generation's phone. But if you were to go into any other phone store with $450, $500, you would also not be getting a Google Pixel 3 or a Samsung Galaxy S9. You would be getting something with a lower processor, an excellent but not top of the line camera, a very, very good but not top of the line screen, and there was also at least when Tim was being interviewed by a certain Asian market journalist, he was and also based on what he was saying a lot during a press day last week, Apple seems to have decided that the way forward to compete with the kind of budget phones that are dominating so many of the world markets is not to try to make an inexpensive phone. They just don't have the skills or the interest in doing that, but to put more refurbished iPhones back into play. So the more older iPhones that they can recapture into the Apple supply chain, refurbish, and then resell to another market halfway across the world, the better for them, because now they will have the ability to sell a $200 bona fide iPhone, and also they can also sell the idea that, look, we don't want these things to go into landfills. That's why we are the most recyclable company ever. We will take a phone back so to make sure that everything gets recycled as it should, not necessarily breaking it down into to become car tires and plastic car bodies, but again to become some kid's first phone halfway across the world.
Well, and do we know what percentage of the users now are in a monthly plan versus the purchase plan? Because it seems like part of why you can keep pushing this price up is because so many people are just making payments.
Right. Now it's $40 a month, which seems like a lot, but I think that's what it is but it's less than $1,800.
Right. I mean, and Americans are not good at thinking about. You give us a payment plan. We're very good at being in debt.
Right.
So I have a question though, Andy. You're making an interesting point. Apple's selling refurbished phones. I mean, in a place like India, for instance, what kind of iPhones can you buy there? can you buy an iPhone 5 in India that's been refurbished and it's a new phone and it costs the equivalent of $100? Is that a thing? I just don't know.
Yeah, it is worldwide. India is special because there's so many markets that are just so idiosyncratic. Like there's in Pakistan, where I'm blanking on. I'm trying to remember the details of the FM radio phones that are so important in certain parts of the country, where you really do have to have an FM radio because data is so expensive that if someone wants to get their soccer scores, their football scores, they're not going to get it off of a data plan. They want to tune in via FM radio to get it that way. So it's not. Apple's just not in a position to create different, like Samsung can build a phone for every neighborhood in a market. If they find out that people love this band in Dorchester, but they don't like this, they like this other band in Cambridge, they can make a Cambridge edition and a Dorchester edition. They've got that manufacturing capability. Apple really has to decide on which 4 or 5 phones they're going to make. So I think they're making a good plan. The other part of their plan, of course, as we're talking about the $1,500 phone, $2,000 phone, I wouldn't be shocked if we see a $2,000 phone, because more and more part of their business, part of their strategy is not necessarily to sell more iPhones, but to make more money off of every phone that they sell. So to somehow add more value to a phone that on the surface doesn't seem to have ungodly wonderful features compared to last year's model, if you can still manage to get people to find that extra $250, that's exactly what Apple's trying to do, because they're, as many analysts have said, they're starting to run out of people to sell iPhones to.
Well, and I think that also
for the first time,
they're making, they're in this area where they do have the group of people willing to pay all that, and they have most of them. So statistically, they have most of those folks that are willing to pay extra for quality. And there are some of us that we spend so much time on our phone, we don't want them to be constrained by, because anytime you make a product, you are looking at that product being, I want to put these features into it this year. I want it to, have these things. Can we get it done in time, and can we get it done inside the constraint of the cost? You can have your phone probably levitate and teleport if we're willing to charge enough for them. And so the issue is that as we go through that, I think that Apple now is realizing that it's better for them to just unconstrain that top end and allow it to keep on floating, and let their engineers do whatever they want to do to, not whatever, but within reason, start to be able to keep on expanding the feature set of the phone. Now, do we think that one of the things that they've obviously spent a lot of money on is and we just talked about the speed of the A12 chip. Is that really as far ahead of Android as people say, Andy?
I wouldn't say so. No. It's a hella fast CPU. It's also has the two things that are going to be more and more important in mobile chip design. One is to just like there's a time where you could have a graphics processor as part of the main processor, and then suddenly no, you can't sell anything like that. It has to have a dedicated GPU. Now you also have to have a dedicated machine language chip, something that will basically do all that math and take the load off of the CPU, and also a secure enclave to make sure there is a place that you can store keys so that they can't be cracked either by bad people or by good people who might be doing bad things in your opinion. Once you're standing there at checkout, I would say there's certainly a step ahead of what I'm aware of, but not light years ahead. And that comes down to the fact that they are literally designing and making their own chips there. They don't have to work with partners. They don't have to tag team off of someone else's business plan. They don't have to wait for someone else to be ready to roll out a certain manufacturing technology. They build it to the specific. They build a specific chip to be put into these specific handful of devices, and by damn it, they get it.
And, Megan, do you think that this is Apple kind of with the A12 chip kind of sneaking up on moving these chips to a point where they do become part of the laptop line?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's hard to say what they're between the laptop and the phone. I always wonder, like, are there people at Apple that are like all laptop and all phone, and they're just like, why aren't we getting that? So I do think that more people are using their phone as, to do almost everything. And so, like you said, why be constrained by anything?
Well, and Adam, doesn't it seem like at some point unifying the chip structure would make sense? I mean, Intel's not going at the speed that Apple wants it to. They keep on building chips that are catching up to where the laptops are.
You have to assume that Apple is compiling macOS on A12 chips. That they were doing this on Intel chips back when they were running on PowerPC. You've got to know that they're thinking that, because Apple doesn't like to be beholden to anyone. And right now they're pretty beholden to Intel. And so this is not to say that it's going to be a complete shift or that they will, do it anytime instantly. But it just makes no sense at all that Apple wouldn't be thinking down those roads as the A series becomes more and more and more powerful.
Now, the final thing that we that Apple touches on almost every event, and we keep on covering is, one of their secret weapons, in addition to the pieces that we've talked about, is privacy. And one of the questions is this really something that's going to continue to separate Apple? I guess specifically, Andy, can Android compete with this? Can Android compete with Apple not needing to sell you anything other than the phone?
No, absolutely not. This is the biggest chink in Google's armor right now, because they're not like Facebook. They're not. They make a considerable amount of money not off of advertising, but that's their iPhone. That's their ad business. It's their iPhone. If it goes away, they got problems, and they don't really have a way to run that business in a way that is as secure as Apple. And whereas a couple of years ago, this used to be a question of pride or marketing, where Apple could say, well, yes, that we don't have an affordable phone, and yes, we don't let users or let alone developers do things they want to do, but by gum, we have the safest and most secure phone, and we say that privacy is sacrosanct so long as you don't ask us about your privacy when using one of our web browsers, because we actually don't care about that. But still, it used to be a lot of like, here's a selling point, a marketing point of our phone, and now we have the EU and the United States government absolutely honking down Google and Facebook snorkels about how they are collecting and abusing citizens' private information. It's a hot button topic. It's something that gets both Democratic voters and Republican voters equally wound up. And so there is no way that this is not going to be a larger and larger issue over the next couple of years, especially to the election coming up 2 years from now. So whereas Apple is being very proactive and announcing to the EU that, that set of regulations that you just passed 4 weeks ago, we are already complying with all of that, or rather, we made trivial changes and we were already planning. We've been following the path of this legislation and anticipating the need to be able to comply with these new rules, and we are now compliant. Google has to go hat in hand and say, here's what we're doing to technically comply, so that you will have to sue us, and then it will take 4 or 5 years of us still making money before we will have to think of something else. It's not just a strategic problem; it is a tactical problem for Google. So that could bring down the ship.
And Adam, as we see more, GDPR, privacy, California laws, all those things kind of moving in, does it feel like Apple is on the virtuous side? Not virtuous isn't good, but like in the advantage over a lot of these situations where the tide of politics is kind of moving their direction, where even though they didn't necessarily create that, they are the ones that take advantage of it.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, I'd like to give Apple credit and say that, they were always totally into this and everything like that. But I think that privacy for Apple has become a huge marketing and product advantage in the last 5 years. And so they've just been hitting that and hitting that and hitting that. And they can do it because it's not where their business model is. They're willing to just sell you product and sell you a service, and they don't have to integrate it with anyone. They're not beholden to anybody. They don't need your data. And so it works so well for them. And they are, as you say, as the tide of history moves more and more towards, you're going to want some access to your privacy, Apple is right there taking full advantage of it. And it's a good thing, actually. Yeah, right. It's good. Have some more privacy, finally.
So does that justify the higher price of the phone? And if so, then how can Samsung justify their high-end phones, or Google, the Pixel high-end phones, which are coming in close to that price anyway?
It seems like it's one of the.
Yeah.
It's just one of the advantages. I mean, so
Right.
like I was talking to someone who has a friend that has a Samsung phone, and the Samsung phone, the camera, according to her, is so much better than the iPhone. So there's still people who are interested in that. There's all these. There's different people with different levers that are important to them. I think that. For me, privacy is somewhat important. so that I definitely am sensitive to that.
Yeah, I think it is. I think I agree entirely. It's just one of those things that it just adds on a little bit that, it's a great phone. It's got cool technology. Oh, and we're not going to be tracking everything you do.
Yeah. Well, let's also just make the point that Apple regards privacy and security as absolutely sacrosanct and paramount, unless you're a Chinese citizen, in which case, well, what are you going to do? So
they have not allowed. They haven't allowed China to hack the phones either, right? I mean, that's not been something that they've provided for. I mean, even in the United States, they allow iCloud to be. If they get a warrant for an iCloud account, they still provide that information.
But they're still willing to let they can. I've said this so many times. I'll try to be as concise as possible. That their position is that they will comply with whatever laws are in place in the country in which they operate. But sometimes the laws that are in place are designed to basically weaponize every single smartphone in every single citizen's pocket and make sure that it becomes a surveillance device and a way to track dissent, either real or imagined, and control it and eliminate it. This is Apple. It's a very, very proud moment when Apple can legitimately say, here's all the hard work we're doing to make sure that even we don't have access to your secrets. That's very, very pleasant and very proud moment, as it was when they stood their ground when the FBI kind of fraudulently said, we insist that you provide us with a custom version of the operating system for getting into a deceased suspect's iPhone. That is very, very laudable. However, this is also the company that when China basically said you can't have the Taiwanese flag anywhere in the emoji file. You can't have that anywhere. You can't have anything that will acknowledge that Taiwan is even a thing, because we do not acknowledge it. So this is the level of granularity that China is sort of inflicting on people and on manufacturers. So
and on airlines.
It's just that every day. Exactly. So anytime this comes up, I just at least want to add that footnote that they don't believe that privacy and security, personal security, is absolutely non-negotiable. They just aren't willing to. They aren't willing to stay out of a market where they will have to compromise the security and the safety of a customer's phone.
Well, and I also think that there's also
which is they can do that. That's fine. I just want to make sure that that's always a footnote in this conversation.
Right. Yeah. And I think that again, it seems to me when I look at what they're doing is that they're still not giving even China access to the data on the phone. They might do something with a flag, and they might, the iCloud stuff is still available, which is something they make available into other countries.
And still on Chinese servers.
Still on Chinese servers, right? So you shouldn't assume that anything you put on iCloud in China is going to be secure. But at the same time, the phone itself is still, there. And the reality is when you talk about the phone, I think that your data is somewhat controlled, but of course you're still touching cell towers, and it still knows a lot of who you called and who you hung out with and where you all were, and those are things that China will still have. There's
no anti-stingray feature even for us.
Yep, absolutely. Now the one thing that we didn't see at the show was a lot of talk about the AirPower. What happened? We didn't even get an update. It wasn't like they didn't say, oh, by the way, not one more thing, or they didn't. There was no. They didn't. They just. Is it going to just disappear? Do we think that it's just they're just going to stop talking about it?
Well, they didn't talk about AirPods either. It would have that would have led to will there be new AirPods? Because you need a special case, right? For the
right.
So I think it is weird that they just brought it up, and then other people have similar things. It seemed really exciting when they first talked about it, but I could care less now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I never really cared that much. I don't even like my watch charger. So to me, when I saw it, I was just like, whatever.
I don't even like my AirPods. So yeah.
I love my AirPods.
They fall out of my ears.
Oh, yeah.
No, but Megan, that's such a great point because it's so easy. Apple did something very un-Apple-y by actually supporting a recognized, established wireless charging standard, and so I think last year people would be willing to wait 3 or 4 months to wait for this wonderful, magical Willy Wonka style AirPad charger with all these magical, mystical features. And then around about month 4, they realized that they could essentially, for 1/4 the price of the AirPad, just simply buy a bunch of really good Anker brand $20 charging pads from Amazon, have them in every place where they set their phone down, and then never think about buying another charging pad ever again. So the rumors about why it's delayed are interesting, but they've lost a huge opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like it was just a difficult engineering process that, getting it so that it could charge an iPhone, an Apple Watch, and AirPods in this reputed new case all simultaneously, and presumably with some kind of Apple special sauce. That things aren't always as easy as they seem, although I think the mistake that people are pointing out is that usually when Apple takes on an engineering challenge that's really tough and they fail, they haven't announced it first.
Exactly.
I see. I thought it was really, really chilling. That at first there were distant rumors that they're having huge overheating problems with them, and they also can't figure out how to. One of the selling points was going to be, oh no, you don't have to drop the phone or the charger or the AirPods anywhere specific. Just drop it anywhere on the pad because we've got so many little copper coils that's going to work. And interference between all of those is working. Also, communication between devices wasn't working. And at that point, I'm like, okay, gosh, that's really interesting and really troubling if true. And then Gruber and a couple others are manipulating their sources. And I think in Gruber's piece on it, he said that that the project at this stage is, I think he's quoting someone that he was talking to at Apple. Say it, Andy. I'm saying, okay, I'll use the word and also the side word, but that letter kerning is a problem. Okay, that you have to make sure in certain words you set the letter kerning correctly, because sometimes if you were to say that the AirPad is flicked, FLICKETED, but the L and the I were too close together, you would get the word that Gruber used, and that is like, oh dear.
Yeah. So we shouldn't hold our breath, and it does feel like that Apple in some cases, like the like the HomePod as well, that where they got themselves ahead of it, are almost reacting somewhat to the market of wanting to tell people, hey, we're working on something, don't go buy something else. And I think that the HomePod is a good example of something that kind of they were behind on, and they've really lost a lot of room. I mean, Google and Amazon have basically taken that market. It's going to be very hard. Apple had to do something even better, but then they came out with it really late, and most of us now have at least one Echo.
Or 7.
Or lots of them.
That's the problem. It's people on some products you talk about the inflection point with smart speakers. There's the infection point where at some point you have just by these have been around for so long now that now I've now realized that I have 1, 2, 3 different Google Home devices, and I'm contemplating during the Black Friday sale this holiday if the regular Google Home goes down to $100, I'm picking up another one, right. And not because I'm a fanboy, but because these things work really great together, and it's really great to be able to have one command that sends the same music everywhere in the house, and I don't have to transfer my calendar, I don't have to transfer everything. The fact that I put another one of these in this place extends the powers of Magic Voice into the kitchen now and into the bathroom. And so now who are they marketing the HomePod to? Basically people who really, really like Apple style, which is a not insignificant reason to buy Apple stuff. People who have grown to know and love Siri specifically, and God knows iOS 12 and Siri Shortcuts is going to give people more reason to love Siri. But otherwise, they really have to turn the tables over and create a new starting point for everybody to really get people into this now.
Well, I want to connect this to the security and privacy conversation we were having before, because I have never chosen Apple because of privacy until I started getting into smart home stuff. And then you're dealing with your personal stuff, your kids, your home, what you're doing. And I have thought that I do feel more comfortable with HomeKit-enabled stuff. I do have lots of Echoes everywhere, but I just, now that it's in my home and listening to everything that I say, I am finding that Apple's promise of security and privacy is more important.
I will admit that I'm waiting for a moment where I feel like the HomePod and all the other bits are mature enough, and there is in the back of my head that I look at the and go, eventually I'm going to have to kill you. I look over at the Google one. I was like, I like you. I'm still talking to you, but I am going to cap you sometime. At some point, And so I'm not that attached to those because I feel like both both groups are collecting lots of data. It's in their, Amazon is building more and more around collecting that data. Sometimes I don't know this for sure, but sometimes I feel like I'm talking on the phone in my kitchen, and then I'm seeing ads on Amazon that are very much like what I was talking about, and it's not that it's happening, but it feels like it, and that's like, it really feels sticky, when that, and I think it's just weird. So anyway,
well, isn't it weird that
some of the Echoes also, they have the picture one that's supposed to tell you what you look like and stuff like that for your bedroom, and that was the one where it just like completely tipped over for me. I was like, that's just wrong. Why would you have an Echo that can see you in your bedroom?
Yeah.
Would do that.
I have an Echo Show, but it stays in the kitchen. It's safe in the kitchen, and it's used mostly for timers. Like, that is the number one use of timers. And my daughter, when she's trying to learn the words to a new song, will sit in front of it and play the song. She'll ask to play the song, and then sit there and watch all the lyrics.
Because the lyrics, it's good for kitchen karaoke as well.
Kitchen karaoke, yes, I do.
Yeah.
I think it is.
But doesn't it make it interesting that we 10 years ago you felt a love for Apple because you felt as though these people, you felt as though what they would do and what they would not do. You trusted them. You feel as though this company is aligned with your values, and that would be a very ephemeral sort of thing. And nowadays, with the power of connected devices, particularly as Megan said, with smart devices and home devices connected over the internet, and the power of basically unregulated privacy here in the United States of America, now that really becomes an important thing. If I had 5 or 6 Amazon smart speakers in my house, I would start feeling a little bit worried because I'm not sure that I 100% trust Amazon to do things that are guided by the right set of morals. The fact that they seem to be driven mostly by numbers, they don't really care about bad reports about how people are being treated in their warehouses or their delivery people. The numbers say that this system is working. They will trust the numbers. And so I feel as though, whereas Google, my opinion of them is that kind of nerdy person who will make mistakes only because they are not the most they're not socially inept, but they are not the most apt person in the world, that they will make a mistake, but it will be an honest mistake, and they will fall over themselves to fix it. I feel as though Amazon is the company that if I were to use my smart speaker to say, hi, could you go on eBay and bid on that auction, they would say, do you know that the same product is available on Amazon? Like, I want it on eBay. I just ordered it for on Amazon. You can, and we won't charge you until 10 days after you receive it. Like, no, that's not what I told you to do.
And sometimes I wonder whether Apple's focus on privacy is rooted in, they started thinking about home products, then they started realizing that people are going to be really worried about home products spying on them, and then they, this is because we know that Apple's been thinking about home products for a decade probably, and started, and what kind of might have guided that thought process was actually thinking about, if we're going to be in your home, if we're going to be in your car, we're going to be on your hand, that us saying we're not going to pay attention to that's not our business model may not turn out today, but a decade from now, when people realize how screwed up that is, that they, it becomes the key, one of the core factors.
Talking about footnotes, I do have to note that if you look in Mojave and the privacy preferences, there's now a new advertising panel, and where you can turn off Apple's tracking, so that you get less customized ads in the App Store and in Apple News, and there's one other place I'm blanking. In stocks. So, they're doing it with their own stuff internally. So there is a little bit of that. Why don't you walk the walk and just ditch this entire tracking nonsense rather than just give us a control over it?
On the other side, I will say that I kind of enjoy the Amazon ads on Facebook. When I do, I tend to go through them because what's funny is that it knows me. Like, I start to think it knows me better than I know myself. Mm-hmm. Like, I look at stuff. I'll look at the first page, because it scrolls sideways. And I look at the first one, I was like, that is crazy. Why would they advertise that to me? And then you look at the next one, you're like, oh, that's not that bad. And the next one, you're like, oh, I really like that. I didn't even know that existed, And so they're definitely building some, so there is something about the contextual ads that is, I find kind of entertaining. I try not to buy anything because I don't want to encourage them. So I just look at it and think about it.
Don't encourage them.
No.
and I gotta say, the reason why I don't really watch anything that's on broadcast television or through my cable is that I get so PO'd by the commercials that said, did a slick talking huckster talk you into buying a timeshare that turned out to be fraudulent and now you're buried under payments? Yep. Talk to our slick talking hucksters. We'll help you. We'll get you out of this horrible agreement and into a new agreement that still gets you screwed but helps us.
I know.
So I have to admit that I'm kind of pleased that I would much rather see, oh, look, it remembers that I was looking for bicycle chain oil yesterday. And now instead of seeing ads for like fraudulent home lending schemes, I'm looking for, oh, look, there's that bicycle oil that I was thinking of buying.
But Amazon still doesn't know that I bought it. I buy so quickly that usually I see these ads for things I already bought. I'm like, you're
well,
too late.
That's everywhere. I bought tickets to Cats, the revival on Broadway, and it's like one of my friends had one of the lead roles in it, and so after like 4 or 5 or 6 months, I'm like, I want Chris to be in this role in this production as long as he wants to be in it. But the sooner this musical closes, the sooner I will stop seeing ads to buy tickets for a show that I saw 7 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so
I have to admit, I just can't pay too much attention to these things. Then again, I grew up. My parents actually hooked up a choke cable. So it's one of those things where you can push a lever and it moves something down at the other end. Uh-huh. And then my father actually drilled a hole through the volume control on the TV so that he could push something while he was lying down on the couch and shut the TV off during ads in the 1970s. So don't pay attention.
And one of the things you think about is that this whole ad market, the trouble is this. It's the same thing that happened to the music industry, which is that in the 90s, I think that really what killed the music industry, it's now coming back, but what really slammed the music industry, and I happened to be in it during this tumultuous time, that in the 80s we came out with compact discs, and the compact discs,
and great music. Sorry,
and great music.
And great music because I'm from the
Oingo
80s,
boingo.
So
do I have to say anything other than oingo boingo? Everybody.
Hey man, I hung out with Danny Elfman. They played at Carnegie Mellon University in the back campus or whatever, and. Anyway, he's a great guy. He's very hyper. Anyway,
but it's not been great music in the 80s, yes.
Yeah. So the issue is that what we saw in music was that we started bringing it up in 1990, 1991 when I was working for Sony. We were like, we know that the CDs cost 44 cents a pop, and the tapes cost 21 cents a unit, to produce, and the CDs were 44 cents a unit. So there's a difference of 23 cents for the same IP. That was the conversation. It's the same IP, but there's only 20 some cents, and you're charging $6 and $16. So when you say, well, you have to pay the artist, you have to pay the artist for the cassette too, so it's not quite that. And we knew that the artist rates, artist producer rates were in $2-3 range, maybe up to $4, depending on the artist. So we knew what the numbers kind of, were on that. And we just said, we're charging way too much for these. We're actually, and there was a band called Ned's Atomic Dustbin. That was one of the bands I was promoting at the time. And they decided to take their album and do a sale at $9.99 instead of $16.99 or whatever across the board. And it, sold like hotcakes. There was definitely a lot of pressure for people who wanted that type of pricing. And so there was a bunch of us that were proponents and, at risk of getting into a lot of trouble, telling everyone we have to lower the price. I mean, CDs should be $8.99 or $9.99, and they didn't do that. And so So what happens is you have a lot of people who just know they're being taken advantage of. When Tower Records is selling at $18.99 for something, we just know we're being screwed. And so what that does is it disconnects that connection to the brand. So no one felt bad when Napster came out. They were like, they've been screwing us the whole time. Like, we're just gonna, no one felt bad, for it. And that was they weren't part of that community. They didn't care. And so then you ended up with, Napster, and I think that in ads, the ads drive us crazy. And I think that a lot of people are trying to figure it out. You figure out there's got to be some fall where people just start moving away from things that have, a lot of ads. I don't watch TV because I can't deal with it anymore. My kids have never seen them. My kids, there's like 1 month in their entire life where they saw.
What about YouTube?
Maybe they see them at the very beginning, but they're not used to interruptions. So they're used to I pay my price of 15, and they go back to their iPad and play Roblox until the ad's done, and then they start watching whatever they're watching. That's kind of their what they do. But the idea that you would have, they're used to the break where their ad used to be in Hulu, it goes dark and then it comes back up. But to them, that's the entire the break. So anyway, so we've got updates coming up. We're going to be talking about the new updates. They all came out this week, or many of them came out. All but one came out this week. But before we get to that, I think Leo has a couple words for us.
Sorry to interrupt, guys, but our episode of MacBreak Weekly today brought to you by FreshBooks. I thought I'd tell you about it because I am a customer. I was for a long time when I was going up to Canada and doing the Call for Help show and the Lab with Leo show. I had to bill, and do expenses and all that stuff. And I'd do it in Canadian dollars. It was a real pain. In fact, some months I would just forget, or maybe intentionally forget. And I did learn that when you don't bill, you don't get paid. Amber MacArthur told me about a new Toronto startup. This is 2004, a Web 2.0 startup called FreshBooks, 2004, 2005, something like that. Now, let me tell you, I don't know how to do accounting. And most accounting software is really made for accountants, not business owners, bookkeepers. People understand things like double entry accounting. FreshBooks is an owner-first accounting platform that puts you, the small business owner, back in control of your business. But you have all the information you need. FreshBooks, they call it approachable accounting, is absolutely full industry standard double entry accounting. Put your fingers in your ears, though, because I know that as soon as I hear that, I go, ah. But no, because you don't do it, they do it. It's automatic, it's painless, and it really works. You quickly can access accounting reports like things like general ledger, trial balance, chart of accounts. That's right there in the FreshBooks dashboard. And you know what? You can share those reports with your accountant, your financial advisor, your tax prep guy, and they'll go, oh, yeah, well, you must have a bookkeeper, right? No, FreshBooks does it for me. Of course, I started using FreshBooks because it let me send professional-looking invoices in seconds. They still do that beautifully. You can see which invoices have been sent, which invoices have been paid, which invoices are overdue, even which invoices have been viewed or not. So your client can't say, well, I didn't see it. Yes, you did. I know you did. It says it right here. You saw it. Accept online payments right from your invoice. Clients do like that because they push a button, they pay you. You don't have to set up a merchant account or anything. It's all part of the FreshBooks service. And this is great. You get paid because clients, it makes it easy for clients. It eliminates the friction. You get paid on average about twice as fast thanks to FreshBooks. You're going to like that, right? FreshBooks is always adding new features. It's a web-based tool. So since I've used it, they've added all sorts of stuff. Like you can now do beautiful proposals, rich text content, images. You can even accept e-signatures as a client, accepts a proposal. Send invoices, yeah, you can do, but also estimates and proposals. And you can do all of that in multiple languages and multiple currencies. FreshBooks automatically, this is so nice, connects to your bank account and updates expenses every day. You can also import in bulk. The best thing for me was the FreshBooks app. Let me take a picture of a receipt, upload it. FreshBooks takes care of the rest. It does the data entry and everything. The app, in fact, I love the app. It lets you keep track of everything on the go all the time. If you're still trying to deal with the day-to-day task of creating invoices, collecting payments, you got to get FreshBooks. If you have great ambitions and you need robust accounting, don't worry, FreshBooks will grow with you. It is a full accounting system. It's just you don't have to see all that complexity. they hide it from you until you need it, until you want it. They really do it great. No matter what your accounting needs, FreshBooks will help put you in the driver's seat. It did for me, and 24 million other people have used FreshBooks to painlessly send invoices, track time, and capture expenses, then get back to doing what they love. That's a lot of people. I feel I could take a little responsibility because I've been singing FreshBooks praises for almost 15 years now. Try FreshBooks free for 30 days, freshbooks.com/MacBreak. If you put MacBreak Weekly in the How Did You Hear About Us section, we'll get credit, and that's important. freshbooks.com/MacBreak. We thank FreshBooks for their support. We thank you for supporting them so they can support us. And now back to MacBreak Weekly. Thank you.
One thing that I forgot to talk about when we were going through the whole thing was the how big of a deal for many people the Apple Watch was for the last presentation. People are like, hey, the phone is okay, but people were really excited about the Apple Watch. Megan, what did you think of that as far as a comparison?
I thought it was exciting. I've had every Apple Watch, and this is the first time that it will actually really physically change. So I'm excited about that. I am excited. I talked about this on iOS today. I'm excited about the fall detection because yesterday I had a fall. You can see a little bit of bruising. And
Ouch.
I know. The first thing I was running, and I fell, and I was alone. And the first thing I thought was like, oh, if I only had my new Apple Watch, like it'd be calling 911 right now while I'm lying here. I got up. But you sort of forget how easy it is to fall, even, when you're not elderly, and what a shock it is to just go down. Mm-hmm. And because I was just thinking, like, how is Apple going to know that? But of course, if they know if I'm riding a bike or, running, it's going to know. A fall is a very certain thing. So I'm excited about that.
So speaking, I actually had exactly the same thing on Wednesday morning, right before the presentation. I went down on my bike, loose gravel, and managed to rip up my palm. And so I was thinking about it when they were talking about this as well, and it interested me because I'm running a bike a lot, and so I have gone down many times, and in most cases, frankly, the last thing I want is 911 being called. And I don't want to even have to think about calling off 911.
Oh, yeah. So
what I've heard, and I haven't obviously gotten one yet to confirm this, is that the feature is on by default only for 65. And so if you are younger than that, you'll need to turn it on manually. Oh. And that if it does activate, it will notice your fall, but it won't activate unless you've been immobile for a minute. So, when I fell down, I was not immobile. I was getting up and yelling and screaming and swearing and all those things that you usually do when you fall in a stupid way and are mad at yourself. So it shouldn't have been a problem. But I do want to see a little bit of how this works because I think it's going to be absolutely brilliant for senior citizens who are really concerned about this, or kids whose parents are getting older and maybe are a little less stable than they used to be on the one hand. And, and obviously the rest of the health monitoring features with the ECG and the AFib detection and whatnot. Boy, this becomes a no-brainer for people of certain health condition scenarios.
Andy, do we think that the watch is really the next core piece of hardware for Apple?
Oh, it already is. I don't think they made any bones about their interest in pursuing health as a whole category. And after a couple of false starts with the Apple Watch, boy, did it find its slot in the road there, and boy, is it going fast and furious. And not just we'll just keep trying new, different fitness and health features and see which ones work and which ones don't. They really have a plan moving forward. Even before they had the ability, the processing power, and the sensors to do things like ECG, EKG, and fall detection, they were still talking about how we're basically creating a new sort of heart health study that if people opt into it, they will be collecting data so that we'll have so that researchers will have a data set they have never had before in terms of activity, heart rate, and all kinds of other health statistics. So this has been an aggressive part of their business, not just a product. It really does throw everything else to shade. The same week that Apple threw the wraps off off of the Apple Watch Series 4. A couple days before that, Qualcomm and quasi Google got together to announce sort of like the next wave of hardware coming for Android Wear, now called wearOS, but we're going to keep calling it Android Wear because that's what we've been calling it for 10 years or whatever. And really, they really couldn't say that they really couldn't show off anything that seemed important. Whereas the Apple Watch announcement, everything just seemed important. It was not just making you more fit, but helping to extend your life and save your life. The Qualcomm announcement was all about, hey, now we're basically making a much better processor with a coprocessor, so that when you don't need Android Wear, the operating system, and you just want it to tell the time and be a fitness watch, it can power down the main CPU, and it can also make it much smaller. You can use a smaller battery. So Michael Kors and all these, basically they are repositioning it as a fashion brand, that anytime a fashion designer who has watches in their line want to have a fitness watch or want to have a smartwatch, here is the operating system and the platform you want to do with it. Which is nice, but it's not like, by the way, if your mom who's been having dizzy spells falls down, she won't have to somehow drag herself to a phone. She'll be able to tap a button and not even necessarily call 911, but call her next door neighbor to please come over, not in a $6,000 ambulance, but just help me get back up and help me get back upstairs. That's how you sell $400 watches, my friend.
And the reason that I'm buying one for my dad for Christmas, I'm hoping he doesn't listen to this. But a year ago, my dad had, he had his heart, he had a bad feeling, went to the doctor. They did some tests, it seemed like it was okay. They said, just rest, and we'll have you come back in if you feel anything else. And then, my dad being my dad, went and was the lead in a play the next night, because he didn't want to let anybody down. So he was like,
the show must go on.
Community theater, and he felt like he was gonna, then he felt horrible. He felt sick. He felt all these other things. Well, he's having a heart attack, and he got, he almost died the next day, and so he's fine now, and doing more than he's supposed to, and all those things. But I'm like, I need to put a watch on that. Because he would have gotten alerts.
If you love it, then you should have put a watch on it. If you love it, then you should have put an Apple Watch on it. Series 4 watch with full control on it.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that afternoon or whatever, it would have been like, your heart is going crazy. You need to go to the doctor right now. It would have told him something. I think. So. I mean, we'll find out.
So my father, we're talking father stories. A year ago, my father had heart valve repair. And so it was all successful and everything like that. But, it's about as major surgery as you get. And so he didn't feel so good and, had to keep going to the doctor. So, this was just regular stuff. And one of the problems was that when he didn't feel good was never when he was at the doctor.
Right.
So this was like last July or 2 years ago in July. And so in January of 2018, when the Cardia Band came out, or December, I guess it's 2017, we got him a Cardia Band, which is, Apple was going on about, this is the first FDA, blah, blah, blah. Right. No, the Cardia Band did this in December and January. Mm-hmm. And you could put your finger on it and it would give you an ECG. And it was interesting. And he did it, and he wore it for a while. I think what we learned is that ECG electrocardiograms are, one, not necessarily something that you as an individual can interpret, and two, that there's a lot of things that can cause variability. So just because you can take one and it might look weird, or it doesn't necessarily mean anything. So they.
Well, I think that in the case that I was talking about is just that you already went to the hospital. It's a warning that you were paying attention to it. Now you really need to pay attention to it. And
I'm more talking about the ECG stuff specifically. That people are going to be looking at this and saying, "Wow, I've got this weird spike." Yeah, a lot of people have weird spikes. This is not not something to be freaked out about necessarily. Go talk to a doctor and get a more serious one done if you think it's a real problem.
And I think that what's more interesting to me about this is not so much how it helps the individual, but as a group, how it's, with all that data going back in, anonymized and, all the things that Apple's going to do when people want to join that study, you could theoretically have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people participating in a study where they may see tremors, they may see things that are happening in someone when they're wearing the watch that may be a precursor to a heart problem that might not present itself until 3 months from now. That we see that when we see this 3 months before, then they die.
Yeah. Well,
we prefer to figure that out early.
It's important to set proper expectations for this. When most people think about an EKG, they think about the classic like 12. It's a 12 sensors, a much more complicated piece of equipment, and an actual technician that's reading things out. This is the sort of EKG that can do more than just say, "Huh, that's funny." It can actually diagnose problems and say, "There's something specific that we think is going wrong, and this is what we're going to be looking at next." Whereas this is technically like a two-contact EKG. And from what I understand, so I've been spending a week trying to understand. I've been talking to more It's weird that there is this history of heart disease in my family. I should have been talking to cardiologists long before now, but no, I'm learning about EKGs and cardiology basically to figure out what Apple is saying about this device. My impression is that people on like cardiology, like message boards, actual doctor message boards, are really, really excited about it. They are echoing pretty much the same things that has already been said here. That it's something that a real EKG is different from a two-sensor EKG, and also it has to. Their only fear about this technology is that even if its utility is to just tell the difference between your heart. My sensors indicate, Captain, that your heart is in normal sinus rhythm, or B, Captain, I'm seeing an anomaly. I don't know what that anomaly is. And also the FDA, I also this morning found the FDA approval papers for it that came through a day before the announcement. They're filed the first or second week in August. The FDA finally came through with their approval one day before. But the actual paperwork says that lists here are the conditions under which we can approve this as a device, as a de novo device, meaning this is the first of its kind, and so we have to give new rules for it because there's no precedent that you can point to say this is how this thing is going to work. And one of them is saying that that the software can't diagnose anything. It has to. The decision of what's going on and what needs to be done is something that always has to be done in consultation with a doctor. So I don't know. I still have questions in at Apple as exactly what kind of alerts. What the actual text of the alerts are, but my impression here less than a week after the announcement, still never having actually put my hands on one of these watches, even in a demo area yet, is that it's going to be it would be a binary sort of thing where this seems like normal sinus rhythm, or no, this does not seem like normal sinus rhythm. It could be an AFib, and then the ability to export all that data into a PDF. But what Alex was saying, I love there's so much I love about this, even if it's not, again, a real like 12 sensor EKG. And I think I mentioned this last week, but it's still very much on my mind. It wouldn't be great if at some point there's actually like a checkbox that's sort of like the organ donor card, like on organ donor checkbox on the driver's license, saying that at the risk that where if you drill down into the settings for health or for the watch, it says, okay, at the risk of being morbid, if you are dying, if you check this box, you give us permission to basically start like a part of this software we call the black box, like the flight recorder, so that when you die, we have a whole bunch of data that not only is going to be available to the people who are trying to resuscitate you, but is also packaged so that researchers can then actually see we had all these sensors hooked up to someone who is in the process of dying unexpectedly, so that we can collect maybe thousands of these pieces of data and detect when something is going kind of screwy, to tell people that, hi, by the way, your 10 o'clock appointment, you're going to have to leave right now because the traffic is getting a little bit late. Your package is going to be delivered at 2 p.m. today, and I think there's an 18% chance that you're having a stroke right now. So maybe you want to add like a detour point towards work.
At some point, your watch just says, it will take you 26 minutes to get to the hospital, and you have 32 minutes to live. We recommend that you move quickly.
It starts displaying your bucket list from Apple Notes with things you can actually accomplish.
The time remaining is not just the time to get to because George Carlin always said, wouldn't it be great if you had a 2-minute warning? 2 minutes, get your.
Yeah, I would like it to just like tweet something funny and sweet, and also post something on Facebook and Instagram, so you're not stuck with like that stupid thing you said. That's what I'm always afraid. Like I'm going to die, and there's going to be some dumb tweet that everyone's going to look at.
This has all turned very far south. But I was thinking it would be nice to have an
animated GIF of an adorable baby elephant that's trying to cuddle with somebody but is falling over. No, don't go to Twitter. That doofbag is tweeting again. You don't want this to be your last thought. Yeah.
In terms of the research, I mean, it's my understanding that part of how they developed this ECG technology is through the heart study that we signed up for or didn't sign up for. Like they are constantly doing that kind of research. If you signed up for the heart study, it went, I think 3 or 4 months, it ended. And, who knows what it was doing, but it was taking rates of your heart rate and at different times. And I compared it to other people and it was all very different. So as long as you sign up for it and give it okay, and it's pretty easy to do. And I would, if you have, unless you're super afraid of not protecting your privacy, I think that there's no reason if you have an Apple Watch to sign up for the heart studies they have so that you can add and make this stuff better.
Well, and I think that is also gets back into why privacy is so important for Apple, that it's anonymizing all that data. And you probably trust Apple that they're going to be able to keep that secret, and so you don't feel like it's affecting your insurance and your employability and all those other things, because it is revolution. And I don't think a lot of us would let Amazon or Google or Facebook do the same thing. I feel like we would be selling us diabetes pills or something. Like it would. It would
the
be
dash button.
Yeah, exactly. Dash button. So the anyway. The updates have started to roll out. iOS has been out. I think most of us have updated. I think Andy, what are the things we should be looking for in the new iOS release?
The first thing you're going to notice is that whether you have a notch or not, everything in the top row of your phone or iPad has been moved over as though your device has a notch. So I got this when I finally finished installing this. I mean, this is not the biggest feature, but this is like, oh wow, isn't it weird? Oh, that's why the date and time is now over on the left-hand edge of the screen, not in the middle. But yes, so it feels faster. It feels more fluid. There's going to be some more gestures if you have an older device that now you will have to know because, for instance, turning down the brightness and the volume is no longer attached to the swipe up. Now you have to use the same corner in drag as people with the iPhone X have been using for the past year or so. But really, Siri Shortcuts is the big win of this entire update. It's packed with protein top to bottom, and it seems to be pretty stable. But the ability to finally have a degree of control over your phone and over your iPad to simply say, here is something that I do every single morning before I leave the house to adjust the lights, make sure that I send a message to somebody, tell them I'm on my way, find out what the weather's going to be, find out what the traffic is going to be. Why do I have to do that step by step by step by step by step? I could script this if I was on a Mac, but I'm not. I'm on my iPhone, something that I spent more than I spent on my Mac, and now the ability to do that automatically, and then not only that, but simply say, hey Shlomo, I'm leaving the house now, and have these 13 things happen for you automatically. And then I obviously haven't had the final version installed long enough for it to learn what I want, but eventually I don't even have to create these shortcuts. It will just simply know that it will figure out that, well, it's 9 a.m. It's Tuesday. He usually goes out to breakfast with friends. So he will just simply add a little alert, a little gentle notification saying, touch this to get the traffic to the diner where you're meeting your friends, because that's something that it knows I'm going to be checking every single time it's Tuesday morning at around 9 a.m. This is going to be I hesitate to use the word game changer because it's kind of meaningless. It's been used so much, but this is the sort of thing that gets someone like me who's been using an Android phone for something like the past 5 years to think, iOS is pretty nice now, and gosh, that's stainless. Did he say surgical stainless steel? The body of that new iPhone 10.
Well, does it?
Gosh, it's really nice.
Do we think it drives the home automation market on the Apple side with the shortcuts? For me, I can see myself wanting it to start boiling the water when it realizes I picked up the phone in the morning. As soon as I picked up the phone, I really want the water to start boiling. I don't have a pot that knows how to do that yet. So
you don't have a smart pot?
I don't have a smart pot.
You have a smart pan. Did you get your smart pan?
I'm waiting for the smart pan. Are you getting the smart pan? Have you?
I want to see if you like it first.
Okay, I'm getting it.
But that's interesting because, like, I do have a connected coffee maker. It's not HomeKit enabled, obviously, or even Amazon Echo enabled. But I do use the app to start the coffee. I wonder if next time I do that, if Siri Shortcuts will recognize that and be able to do that.
You just
if the app supports it.
Yeah. Oh, the app has to support it.
That's going to be the real problem. I mean, every time I sort of think, oh, I'd love to automate this thing that I do on my iPhone, the app doesn't support it. That every night I want to turn on the Libby app and listen to the current audiobook for 15 minutes on a sleep timer. But until Libby allows me to do that and then invoke it with Siri, I'm going to be opening the app, tapping play, tapping 15-minute timer, and then putting the phone down. And, those actions are going to be unavoidable until the app I want supports those capabilities.
And then also, how deep into the app will the app support it? I know that when NPR allows for the playlist again, which they've said that they are going to do, which I'm very excited
always
about.
with the NPR playlist.
They're going to put it back in. They've said that they're putting it back in. They sent me an email. They said, by the way, we're going to do this.
They acquired my friend Russell Ivanovich, co-head of Pocket Cast, to basically not only to make Pocket Cast an internal project, but also to inform and counsel the development of podcasting and digital broadcasting. I'm sure that we will see it. If not, we know who to beat up in Australia to make that happen.
Well, I have a question for you, Adam. I mean, does the Audible app support it? Because I think that it's.
I don't know. I have to admit, when I mentioned Libby, Libby is a new app from Overdrive.
I love Libby.
Overdrive, and and the beauty of it is that living in New York State, as I do, everyone who pays taxes in New York can get a New York Public Library electronic card and then take out ebooks and audiobooks from the New York Public Library, which is a huge collection, much better than and bigger than the Finger Lakes library system that is here in Ithaca. And so, honestly, not buying books much because I read fast and it just works well to get from the library and, one in, one out.
I love Libby. It's a great app too. Yeah. It's really nicely designed now.
Yeah, it seems to, it works well. I have to say, I only consider book reading apps to be fine or bad. I mean, either they work the way you expect and it's just okay, or they suck. Well, and you're like, how did this be? How could you have thought this?
I guess that I keep on thinking this is the lost opportunity for Apple with the Books app, is that there's an opportunity because Apple doesn't have to follow along of creating books that are really interactive, creating books that are, and part of me thinks that maybe that's where they're trying to go towards with texture and so on and so forth. Maybe not, but I feel like books are, when we put it's kind of when we take a book and we scan it or whatever and convert it to a digital format and put it on a phone and then read it. It's kind of like, we're taking this old thing and putting it on something new rather than saying, we could build something that's much more interesting, and I think, that had video and had things, had a lot of.
I mean, that's nice, but I think you're overthinking it. It's just, it's like, what if the White Album is fine? The Abbey Road album is fine. You don't have to say, but if we're moving this onto a phone, shouldn't we have like augmented reality and we should have like Start the Pepperland Band actually marching and playing on your desktop? Where no, the thing that was created was this album that was designed to be listened to without cartoon Sgt. Pepperland. I think books are the same way. They're one of the things that's so brilliant about it is that it really is just ASCII text. As long as you just take that pile of 8-bit data and pour it into another container, it will assume the shape of that container and absolutely work.
I think taking old books and doing that makes sense. I just think that as you look at new books, I think that the issue is that I know that how much.
I don't have a hard enough time convincing someone to publish my novel to convince them to also find $1.2 million to build this entire digital strategy around it. So, that frankly, I never thought was part of it because I really wanted to write a funny story about someone who manufactures cardboard boxes in Australia. So.
Yeah. So speaking as someone who was a book publisher, and actually my degree from Cornell is in hypertextual fiction. So I actually have been doing, sort of go beyond the book since 1988. And the problem is exactly what Andy was saying, is that writing a book is something someone can do without a whole lot of other people. And you might need an editor, you probably need proofreaders, et cetera, maybe an indexer, but that's all really easy and relatively cheap. As soon as you get into audio, video, interactivity, you are talking video games. You're talking massive production budgets. You're talking skills that the author doesn't have. The author may not even have the art direction skills to explain what they want. They probably, frankly, don't want anything. And so every time I see one of these books, I look at them periodically, and they're moderately interesting, but I've never seen one of these things where and this is over decades of looking and being back in the academic research. Just no one does anything that interesting is what it comes down to.
I just think that that is and maybe so. I mean, I know that we build a lot of hardware that does things that nothing else doesn't do it. Hasn't been done before, because we know that there is a market there somewhere that is going to allow us to do that process. And admittedly, I think back in the mid 90s, an animation company asked me to write their manual, and of course I said, if I'm going to write the manual, this is what I want. And it was basically built in HyperCard, like early 90s. It was like, I'm going to build the whole thing in HyperCard. You can click on things, and there'll be little animations, and the issue is that there was and where I really got it when I did build a little how-to internally when I was working at a company about how to use this. It's called Mr. Nitro. It was the thing that blew things up in computer graphics, which I'm really good at, is blowing things up. So anyway, I still can't. Weird. Anyway, it's long. I'm not going to talk about that on the show. So anyway, but what I did is I built thousands of samples where I just changed everything slowly, changed all the variables, 5 points at a time, and built literally thousands of renditions, and then you could just change them and hit the button and watch it. And what happened was immediately you understood how it worked. Like if you just changed it and you could just change all of these things and immediately hit go, because instead of rendering for 4 hours, the iteration rate had you completely understand what you were looking at very quickly. And I realized how important at that moment getting animations and seeing video of something, changes the way you interact with it, and changes how fast you can assimilate. And I think that I personally think that the future of education is going to be a lot more video driven than what we have now. And I have said this before on the show that text is a highly efficient compression and it's a highly efficient compression technology that takes a lot of power on the encode and decode to get the full value out of it. And so you have to have someone really good at writing and someone really good at reading it. And I think that the issue is that we could teach people a lot faster if we weren't slowed down by that compression technology. So there's some people who are good at reading, but we spent 2 million years watching somebody else do something and learning how to do it by looking at what they were doing. And there's a lot of and that's been the issue that I've had. And it's been really funny. I've gotten close to writing books before. And it's mostly been a thing of like, if I can't add a bunch of interactive stuff, I'm not interested, because
I do think you actually, you make a good point in terms of tutorial or specifically when you were learning a physical task, that kind of thing. I say,
but 90% of a bookstore, what used to be bookstores, 90% of a bookstore was nonfiction. It was about something we were interested in. 10% was fiction. Now they might have a lot of bestsellers, but when you look at the mass of a Borders bookstore, there's one section that's nonfiction, and the rest of it's all about things that we're interested in. It's not, it is not it's not a fiction-driven business. So that's sure, you're right. Fiction, that doesn't make sense. I think fiction is fine for all books.
And actually, I guess what I was going to go for though is that, this video podcast notwithstanding, I find that I far prefer FaceTime audio when talking with my parents, for instance. I know what my parents look like. I don't need to have a phone. We could do a video call. We have all this technology. And what it turns out is voice is in fact all we need.
And I'll agree with you talking about those things.
Do something.
I will agree talking about that. And I think that there are definitely subjects that I don't think necessarily make sense for this. There's a lot of things I like to listen to. I hate video calls. Which is funny because my entire business is built on video interaction over. We did 800 Hangouts, for clients. And so I it was my business. It was really funny because Google could never get me on on a video call. Like they, hey, do you want to go hang out? And I'm like, I don't have enough bandwidth, and I just call in, because I was like, I'm not interested, because I do all kinds of things while I'm on the phone. I clean my office, and it keeps me calm as to like clean my office and fiddle with things and everything else. And so if you put me on a video call, I'm literally looking at the thing of how fast can I get off this call. Maybe that's why they do it. But I was like, I for video calls, I have an agenda. We're going to move through that agenda, and we're going to close this and give me back 15 minutes. So it's an interesting. So I agree with you on that. I think that anyway, that's a whole nother. We're going down a rabbit hole.
So many rabbit holes.
We went down one rabbit. Now, do we think that the life balance? Do we care about the life balance?
You mean
screen time?
Screen time. I care about it a lot for myself and for my children. I set it for myself. I think it still has some work. I set it yesterday for myself, and I said that I was going to go dormant between 10 and 10.
How'd that work for you?
10 and 7. It went fine. Usually I have do not disturb on, but that doesn't keep me from picking up Twitter, and looking at it. But at 6:30, I did the thing that I normally do, which is to check Twitter at 6:30 in the morning. First thing I do, and it said my time limit was up, which isn't accurate because really just I was on that just do not disturb. It wasn't that I'd reached my time limit, but I didn't check Twitter. I was like, oh, you know what? It's 6:30 and I could just go eat breakfast with my kids and do other things besides being on Twitter. So it was a nice reminder. But I did try to set it up with my kids who have all, like they're 15, 13 and 13, and they've had many years without it. And they've also had many years of me throwing like things that were in beta screen, things that purported to help you manage your kids' screen time, but really just mixed up all their apps and drove them insane. So they're already wary. And both of my boys who have the iPhone SEs said, well, will it work if I don't update to iOS 12? And now they're like, because maybe we won't update to iOS 12. Because I can say, because I'm updated and it'll show me them. It'll show me, my kids in there. It is rather confusing even for me, and there's some questionable placement, but it is better than what was there before. And I think it's nice just for a reminder for me or for them that like, hey, you've been playing games for 2 hours. Like, do you, want to do something else?
For me, the interesting thing is that I started reading a lot about that there are some theories that the whole screen time push and the amber color and all those things are that they're finding the blue color may cause macular degeneration. Oh. And I had this at the same time I was reading that, I was noticing that when I spent a lot of time on my phone, I was feeling like there was a blind spot, kind of like a burnt out screen on my eyes. So I just turned my phone to amber all the time. Like I just set it starts at 10 p.m. and ends at 9:59 p.m. scheduled. If I want to if I watch a movie, I'll turn it off if I'm watching a show. But I just leave it on amber the whole time, and I leave it on half. And I've noticed how much better my eyes. No, I didn't slow down how much screen time I have. Yeah. I just slowed down how much.
We never had these problems with our eyes when our phones had CRTs in them. I've always said that if you have a good CGA, EGA card in a phone, a good 9-inch screen, you don't have to be any bigger than that. A vacuum tube, never any eye strain whatsoever.
I think
back and neck
strain
always, but eye strain, no problem.
Now, what do we think are the big for the watchOS also came out? What are the new features that we're most excited about?
Automatic workout detection. Finally. I mean, why should you have to remember to start your workout, and then you don't remember until you're halfway in, like, oh, now I've missed it. And you can't actually control the Apple Watch during
what does it do with the automatic
anyway.
workout? I'm trying to figure out and I have to admit, my workouts are very old fashioned. So all I need is time.
So at least running, I don't do any of the other workouts, and I don't. Okay. I sort of do this for amusement value because I'm always using a Garmin 620 for my real stuff. But basically, you just start running, and about 3 minutes in, you'll get a little tap on your wrist, and it will say, "It looks like you're doing a workout. Would you like me to start?" And you tap a green button, and it retroactively applies everything you did in terms of time and distance to when you started. It's smart about starting, and it's smart about ending. It's not very smart about pausing. Pausing, it seems to check arm movement, and so if you're talking with people or stretching and just moving around, it will often start up, and so your times and thus your paces will be quote unquote wrong. But it's very good about you get in the, this is the other thing you do is you get back in the car after your workout and you drive home and you're like, oh, I forgot to turn off my workout. Look, I've been running really fast for the last 3 miles. Is that you have to, if you do stuff with Strava, there's actually a thing you can edit your segment to cut out the part where you were driving because it's obviously stupid. And so it is nice that again it will retroactively go back and say, yeah, you ended this a while ago. Let's take care of that properly. So I just think that's brilliant. There's no reason why it shouldn't be able to use these sensors to figure out what you're doing and react appropriately.
The pausing was already included. Like if you set it, like when I walk my dog and I set a walk and then he has to stop and sniff everything, it'll just stop if I'm not moving. I found that to be pretty useful, but maybe that's just because my heart rate isn't very high.
Well, it's not heart rate. I said I think it's arm motion.
Oh.
So for instance, for me, I park, if I'm driving to go running, I park the car, I run a mile into where I meet my friends, and then I do various sorts of dynamic stretching exercises to warm up for the run. It doesn't shut off during any of those dynamic stretching exercises because I'm actually moving. I'm not running.
Like mine doesn't even know if I use a recumbent bike. That's what I watch because the one way to get me to bike a lot is I sit down on the recumbent in the gym and I watch a show. Like I just bike. I get to watch a show because I don't really watch
winter
shows all the time.
Right.
So unfortunately, if I do a movie, then I get really tired and because I just want 2.5 hours in there.
But it's good for you.
The bike turns off a couple times.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you got to get out of here. There's people waiting for you. Is anyone excited about the walkie-talkie? Has anyone used the walkie-talkie?
Tanya hasn't updated her watch yet, so I haven't got a chance.
I haven't used it, but I don't really I know if I'm trying to, my husband's at the store and I need him to buy milk. I mean, he doesn't have let's say he had an Apple Watch. How is it different than me just texting him to say buy milk?
Well, you can talk to him.
Because
you can just interrupt him right then and there.
But what's it different than calling him?
You just don't have to.
It's your voice rather than the phone ringing.
And I think it's also like you can just.
So it's like I could
push to tap.
Okay, maybe I do need to get him an Apple Watch so I can just be like, I'm watching you. I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant way for Apple to if one partner has one but the other one doesn't. It's a good way for them to sell a second Apple Watch.
Yeah.
I do think what you were just saying, the idea of being able to do it as an announcement. Someone said Evil RC on the chat in the chat said walkie-talkie works best as an intercom in the house. I was like, can you walkie-talkie it to the HomePod? That would be actually that'd be pretty useful. Like dinner's ready or your omelet is getting cold. I have to yell that downstairs right now. So.
Well, see, for the last 2 years of Tristan being in high school, I would raise the watch, say, hey Shlomo, it's time. Tristan, text Tristan, it's time for dinner. I mean, that was what I did, and it was great to do it via Siri because my hands were often dirty or I was busy cooking or whatever, and so that was the thing. And so I think being able to do that via voice, just another method.
tvOS is updated.
Before we leave watches, one more thing. I'm really looking forward to the new Siri watch face because it will bring to Apple Watch something I really like about Android Wear. The idea that it will figure out what it thinks you need to see, you want to see, or you need to see at this moment, and make sure that that's right there in the watch for you, so you don't have to drill down into any other apps or scroll through alerts.
Siri.
Again, that's why I say I'm keen to see how well it works. Yeah. It works. I've seen it on my Android Wear watch. They have something like this only because that's how they designed the user interface to essentially give you a glance and figure out what you'd want to see in that glance and make sure that's on the screen at the right time. And for Apple to do it in a much more sophisticated way, that could be a really big thing. I think that as I said, I think when the first Android Wear watch came out, I think I might have first said that after I got my first demo of the first Apple Watch, saying that the standard unit of interaction with a smartwatch should be glancing at it for 5 seconds and getting that piece of information that you want to get out of it. That the moment that the watch forces you to start tapping and scrolling and clicking and swiping, you lose, because that's not what people are not. People have one of these to do the swiping and the clicking and that sort of thing. The watch is glance, what time is it, or glance, what gate is my flight at, or glance, like do I have enough time to get to get home before whatever time. So that's the Siri watch face could be really cool.
And one of the things, the Uber face that we saw last week with the 8 complications is only on the new watches. So as you update your watchOS. That was a question that I got a lot of last week. Are you going to get to have that new interface with all those complications?
But there are more complications that you can put on the old modular face.
Right.
So the old modular face, which is, I don't know, that seems to be the most popular one that I hear people talking about.
Right.
Well, you can do more there.
That's great. So new Apple TV OS. I don't really.
Yeah, whatever.
Sure.
Sorry. Oh, yes.
Oh, Dolby Atmos.
Dolby Atmos. That's cool.
But then you have to have the speakers, right?
Yeah.
Doubly? Can we do?
I thought that. No, I think
Spinal Tap.
Adam, I think. Oh yeah, well, whatever is actually what Apple said during the keynote about tvOS when they mentioned it. Oh yeah, Apple tvOS, whatever.
Here it comes. There it goes. Yeah. So nothing here to see. Also, the HomePod has been updated with multiple timers.
And phone calls.
I haven't used it yet. Have you used it?
I have not used it for phone calls.
I thought we were getting multiple timers on our watch, and I set 2, and then I tweeted about it yesterday, and someone was like, that's not, you didn't get that. I was like, oh, yeah, that's true. One's just stopped.
I know. I have to
Why is that so hard?
I don't know. I'm sure that they think that that's too complicated. Like that's the whole thing is like it's too complicated for people to have 2 timers. And so I have to like there are things you have to set. Like I have to think about it and set a scheduled alarm for one timer, and then because the main timer I use for me is just tea. That's how long my tea is going to brew. That is we've got a couple more things to talk about. Are they deleting our movies? And a little bit about Infinite Loop coming up next. But before that, Leo's got a couple other things to talk about.
Let me interrupt a little bit. MacBreak Weekly brought to you this week by Rocket Mortgage from Quicken Loans, introducing something new from Quicken Loans, Rate Shield Approval. You ready to buy a house? Rate Shield Approval takes the anxiety out of house hunting. Interest rates are going up. Every day you delay, every day you don't find that perfect house, there's always that risk that it's going to cost you thousands of dollars more because the interest rates went up that day, except if you use Rocket Mortgage. We've talked about Rocket Mortgage. It's from Quicken Loans, the best lender in the country, #1 in customer satisfaction year after year, according to J.D. Power. They have something they call the power buying process. The thing I love, frankly, it's not even in the ad here, is it's all online. I can do it on my phone. I don't want to go to the bank. I don't want to dress up. I don't want to pretend I don't need, you have to pretend you don't need the money so you can get the money, right? Oh, no, I don't need the loan. I just want to, just for fun. None of that. You just go to rocketmortgage.com/MacBreak, sign up for an account, answer a few simple questions, and then this process, the power buying process begins. First, they'll give you, based on income, assets, and credit, the loans you qualify for. You choose the rate, the down payment, the term. Pick the thing that's right for you. Within 24 hours, you will get verified approval. Within 24 hours, now you have the strength of a cash buyer. You can print a letter, literally, that you bring to your realtor or the seller's realtor that says they're good for it. No contingencies. They've got the loan. That puts you right at the front of the line when you're buying a house. That's great. Man, I wish I had that. That's awesome. We didn't know if we had the loan for 2 months the last time we bought the house, thanks to those. It wasn't Quicken Loans, it was the bank. And they were nuts. It was just the worst. We almost lost the house. I wish we'd had this. You got it. Use it. The power buying process. Now that you got verified approval, the next step kicks in, and this is really great. Rate Shield approval. Once you're approved, you qualify for this all-new exclusive Rate Shield approval. Here's what they do. They lock your rate for up to 90 days. So interest rates are going up. You don't have to worry. Your rate isn't. You're guaranteed that rate for up to 3 months while you shop for a house. So you have the luxury of really taking your time, finding the right place. It's a big deal. This is a big, important purchase. You don't want to be rushed. Lock your rate. If the rates go down, your rate will go down, actually. That's good. But the rates can't go up. So you win either way. This is exactly what you'd expect from the best mortgage lender in the country. RocketMortgage.com/MacBreak. Go right now. Get signed up so you're ready. It's fast. It's easy. It's kind of nice to buy a new house. You're going to love it. But start with Rocket Mortgage. RocketMortgage.com/MacBreak. Now I'm going to give you some legalese. Rate Shield approval is only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply based on Quicken Loans data in comparison to public data records. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS ConsumerAccess.org number 3030. Here's what you really need to remember. RocketMortgage.com/MacBreak. Do it now. RocketMortgage.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support. I talked to listeners, even hosts, who have used Rocket Mortgage and just love it. Couldn't be happier. So who was I talking to? Was it Sam? I think Sam Abul-Samid. Brad Sams also. 2 Sams. That's a coincidence. Both used Rocket Mortgage, and it was really good. I talked to another listener who refied, got great rates. RocketMortgage.com/MacBreak. Now back to MacBreak Weekly.
So one of the things that we have been hearing, there was a drama last week or over this week, is someone reported that Apple is now deleting their movies and not giving them any kind of refund. Adam, what's the scoop on this?
Yeah, so this has gotten really quite interesting. I'm still tracking the guy down a little bit, but it appears that he was in Canada, where he bought some movies with a Canadian iTunes account, and then he moves to Australia, and so he's in Australia now. And then 3 movies disappear from his library, and he asks Apple what the deal is, and basically they say they're not available, licensing reasons, and it's still a little unclear to me, kind of why that is, they don't do particularly good customer service here. They toss him a bone on, we'll give you some, a couple of rentals, which did seem to be a little bit cheesy. And then he posts about this and, includes the email from Apple and everything like that. And so it kind of blows up, but it does seem as though no one else is running into this. And so there may have been just let's face it, this is a mind-boggling, complex, annoying situation where you have to have different licensing arrangements in different parts of the world. This is like the DVD region playing problems. And so my guess is that that's what he's run into in some way, and it's not anything that's more general than that.
Is it something that we should worry about? I mean, and I know that, like, for me, I've had a couple times where, I changed my credit card number, for instance, or I lost my ATM card and I had to have it replaced. And then Apple literally locked up, while I was waiting for that, locked up all my movies. And I'm like, hey, I bought these. Yeah. I shouldn't have to have my credit card valid, quote unquote, to just get the movies. Well, and
you can download them. And that's, I think, the other thing is that if something is available entirely online, there's all these obstacles to you getting it. You have to know your password. You have to have your account still has to be good. You have to have your credit card associated and things like that. So in the case like this one, where you can download, is my understanding anyway, had he just had a local copy, it wouldn't have been an issue. And the problem was that he was relying entirely on the cloud,
which most of us do. I mean, and there's not a
totally legit, right?
And I'm sure that he didn't know when he did it that was going to be an issue.
Now, that said, it would have been nice if Apple had sent him something saying, by the way, you're going to lose access to these, you should download them, as opposed to, so sorry, you've lost. Well, not even so sorry, they disappear. So that's the other thing, is he had no notification or warning or anything like that. So I think I think the big lesson for the cloud companies is sometimes that they just need to be more transparent about some of these licensing issues or whatnot, where people can get hit in ways that are completely non-intuitive. You just but I bought this. Why don't I have it? Why can't I get it?
It's not really a purchase. It's kind of an extended rental.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the difference is that, like, if I bought this copy of DVD of Strange Brew, and I'm responsible for making sure that, like, I keep track of the DVD and I keep track of the case, but I do physically own this, and I can actually sell this on when I get tired of ever seeing this again.
That would never happen.
Exactly.
But you can't move to Australia.
For God's sakes. But
you
the thing is, no matter
Australia and watch it there. That's the thing. The DVD regions will bite you.
Well, There are ways around it, but again, the thing is, I could still let's say I did go to Australia and Regent Cones bit me. I could still sell this to someone in America because I own this. This is mine. Yes. You have to remember that whether you're buying a book on the Kindle store, whether you're buying a game for the iPhone, whether you're buying a movie on iTunes, what you're buying is a license to use it to use it in accordance to whatever terms of service you've agreed to. In the 32 pages you click through because you wanted to install the latest version of iTunes on something. So as the most famous, there was a famous issue, I think in 2010 or something, a while ago, where I guess the Kindle store had a copy of an Orwell book that apparently they shouldn't have had, and so people who bought it, it suddenly just disappeared from their library because they were the situation changed and suddenly they didn't have the right to own it anymore. And so rather than simply writing them letters as in olden days and saying, hi, we sent you a copy of this book that we shouldn't have sent you. Here's a postpaid mailer. Could you put it back in this bag and send it back to us? They could just simply essentially break into your house and steal it back and shred it. So that's why I will always, if there's something, every single time, the highest compliment I can give like a movie or an album is when I don't even care that I've already got it on Google Play Music and on iTunes because I'm subscribing to both of them. It's like I actually want them on CD. I want them as unlocked MP3 or FLAC files that I can put anywhere I want, and that there's nothing. If there's a biblical apocalypse, so long as I could still recharge my phone or my player, or at least get my Sony Discman working again, I can still listen to this album because it is not beholden to this device being able to talk to Apple servers and get a note back saying, yes, Andy is indeed entitled to watch Strange Brew. He did pay $13 for it back in 2013.
But I will say also just the one variable there that we hit as well is that, our VHS tape of The Princess Bride, which is one of the very few movies that we would ever watch again. Even though we have a VCR on a big screen TV, it's just horrible. So the life moves on. I mean, in some cases, unless you've got a first edition leather bound of I don't know what, The Great Gatsby, life moves on. All this modern media does have a lifespan. So
and I think that the other side of that is that when I look at like what Apple now with Apple TV, there's a bunch of movies that I bought that are now available in 4K. Well, if I had bought that physically and then 4K came out, I was not going to get that. I'd have to buy it again.
Right.
And if you put it movies anywhere, you can, even if one of the services go down, you can get it from another one.
But I think that's a really important point, though. If I own something, if I own a Blu-ray, and let's say that I was able to take this Blu-ray I purchased and somehow through some elfin magic convert it to a video file, I can convert it to another format. It won't be upsampled to 4K. And it won't have Dolby Mega sound, whatever. But I can still convert that from a format that's no longer useful to me to a format that is now useful to me. Well, I can copy it from one device to another without having to say, "Mother, may I?"
Well, not that I would ever condone this, but I've heard that there are HDMI to SDI converters sold on Amazon for about $40. That validate the HDCP, but then just push SDI out the other end. I've heard that if you hooked up one of those to an Apple TV, heard only in rumors and on Reddit and so on and so forth, that you could hook a recorder up to the other side of it and then just hit play and record, and it's bit for bit pretty darn good. I would, but of course I would never adhere to that. And I would never name the name of AView being the little converter box that you could use it.
Andy's not even acknowledging you.
Yeah, exactly.
He would never do that to Strange Brew.
I am morally outraged that you would use that kind of converter
I have never
to capture the HDMI screen. You should do what I do. Do the ethical thing and simply use a piece of software to break the encryption on the Blu-ray.
Now, Megan,
I guess my parents just raised me right.
I do buy movies on iTunes. I was burned really early on. Do you remember, in the early 2000s? I remember when I first signed up to download to iTunes when it first came out, and I was downloading it at work, and I had a Windows computer, and you would give you'd have to give them your birthday. And like in 2000, I remember that being like, I'm not giving anyone my birthday. Like, so I'd make up a fake birthday.
Yeah, you forget
and then, years like, then I lost my account and I didn't have access to my email address. So then you're just lost, So all those movies that I bought were just gone. You're right. Like they never belonged to me and I just gave up. So and then I went through a stage where like bought a lot of DVDs, which I still own. But now I do buy movies and even TV shows. Like I'm with you, Andy, like it's sort of, like the highest compliment you can give. Like we were watching Killing Eve through the BBC app and then it ran out. And so I was like, well, we only have 2 episodes left, but I love this show and I want to support more creative shows like this. I'm just going to buy the whole season. And it does feel like you come to a certain kind of maturity where you're putting your money behind something instead of just figuring out other ways to get it.
I buy a lot. I mean, I have my subscription on Netflix and I have my subscription on Prime and I have my wife and kids watch a lot of dance shows on Hulu. that's their big dance and singing competitions or whatever. And then I buy a lot of, I have a lot of movies. I don't rent movies because I never make it to the window. I just rented, I was going to rent the I, Tonya. I rented it. And I ran out of the window. I wasn't in the mood. I just kept on not being in the mood and not in the mood because I was like, I don't think I'm going to watch that again.
So you pay for it, but you don't watch it.
I paid for the rental and I didn't watch it. And then I
also say that another advantage is going to Goodwill and like buying a movie like that, not only for only $2, but also paying cash and knowing that there is no digital record anywhere that I was interested in seeing I, Tonya, let alone owning it.
Well, it got such good reviews because I first saw it.
It seems good.
It's free on Hulu, apparently.
Free on Hulu, so
That's good to know.
And fortunately, I have Hulu, so that will work out. Yeah, but the other thing that drives
other
me
ways
crazy,
not to watch it.
I think I don't understand. One of the things I don't understand
I can now
is
not watch. If you have your own copy, you can not watch it on any device you own at any time.
Well, what I don't understand is like with Netflix and Amazon Prime, they're constantly expiring I'll download a whole bunch of stuff. Like I'm just going to fill up my iPad. I'm going on a trip, and then it seems like days later, it's like they're all expired, and I'm like, really? I mean, Did I miss my payment? I don't understand why these things are getting expired, and that's part of why I have iTunes on some of the stuff because I just want to know that there's a movie that I really want to have, and because I'm head of the household and I got all these like I buy these things knowing that my kids will watch it 100 times and they'll enjoy it. I don't buy as many rated R movies because of that. But anyway, so it doesn't sound like it was quite as clean as it was made out to be. Now, one of the other things that was really interesting that we saw come up is the Wired. Did you guys read the Wired story about the oral history?
Yeah,
it was pretty tasty.
Of Infinite Loop, the old Apple campus. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool
that was it's still the current campus. I mean,
the original campus, right? But yeah, it's worth reading because if you're expecting here's what the land was like before they started building, and here was it really is like stories from people who had been working there, including like all the way up to Tim Cook, people who were working on that campus. So it's basically a large collection of stories of Apple history that are very, very personalized. Like my favorite one is from Scott Forstall. Who was saying that, like, so he would have lunch with Steve Jobs, and of course he was the king of, well, look, we all eat like in the big like room with everybody else, because instead of like making the point of other CEOs who like had their dinner set up on fine china in their own boardroom, like no, and so Scott tells a story about how, well, Steve would get like pre-made like sushi and like be at the register, and I'd have ordered like a wood-fired pizza, and he'd always insist on paying for me, and I feel guilty because like he's waiting for me, and I just kind of feel awkward. And I finally say, well, Steve, I can pay for my own. That's fine. And then Steve says, no, you don't get it. You know how like you use your ID and like Scott, so like they're gonna like deduct $15 from your pay. My pay is just like $1 a year. It's like we're both getting free dinners. It's like this guy has billions of dollars, and he's like giggling because he's like screwing Apple out of free sushi and a free pizza. Could we love this man anymore?
I like the story where they talked about, I guess, when they were canceling the Newton, that people were protesting.
Yes.
Outside, and they were like, they're protesting, and Steve was like, they should be angry. They have every right to be angry. They should be angry. Let's take them donuts and coffee, and apologize, and tell them that we support them.
They love the Newton. They have a right to be wrong. We should send them coffee and donuts and tell them that we understand. Keep protesting. We had to do what we had to do, but. Right. Yeah.
We'll come out with something very similar in a decade. Just hang on.
Yeah, right. $700. Get another $700 ready. We're going to need it from you in a couple of years' time.
But it is interesting. You know, it's a very different campus than the new one. You know, it's also, I think that part of it is they're treating it like it's like, I think the oral history of like the Infinite Loop, like they're going away. But it's right. You know, it's still a coveted place for a lot of the teams. It doesn't have the open office, you know, layout. It's still, you know, I think there's some teams that prefer to be still over there.
Yeah. Oh, and in such a beautiful way, where Tim's saying that of course Steve's office, like at One Infinite Loop, he just locked the door. It's exactly as it was when he left it. There's some personal things in there that went to his wife, but otherwise the drawings on the whiteboard are still there. The stuff on the desk is still there, and occasionally he like goes back to that old office just to get inspired and just to think about things, which is like, oh God. Wired magazine, you're not supposed to make me cry.
Have you read Ken Kashenda's book, Creative Selection? He was the Apple engineer. I think Renee talked about it on this show. He worked on the iPhone, the iPad, the Apple Watch. He helped develop the keyboard, and I got to interview him. And his book is great. I highly recommend it. Like, and it's getting to the point where I feel like reading Apple history really is history. I remember reading Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs, and I felt a little guilty. I was like, oh, I'm just sort of obsessed with Apple products. And but now I'm over that. You know, I just like all this stuff. I eat it up. I love it. It really is part of our history. And if we're using these devices constantly, there's no shame in obsessing over the history of them.
It's just a very interesting DNA.
I'm glad these stories are being recorded because Steve supposedly was just very anti-history. He was like not sentimental at all. But it's not being sentimental. It's like having stories that can inspire future generations of engineers and entrepreneurs. I'm glad these stories get written down someplace rather than just simply disappearing like tears in the rain.
Yeah,
so to speak.
I mean, Ken's book does that really well. I think he talks about like how, what are the important things about being creative and putting creative products out in the world, and what does it take to do that? And it's not just like, sort of obsessing over Apple products.
Well, and Apple has figured something out. I mean, they went from near death to the largest company in the world. It's probably worth studying them a little bit. Like there's some version of DNA there that is. That's probably useful for anybody running a company to look at what they did, and they run very differently than a lot of other companies. They approach the entire process in a much different way than a lot of other corporations.
Well, particularly modern corporations. I mean, they're in some ways a very traditional corporation in terms of just selling a product.
Right.
It's like not trying to make money on all the other stuff.
Well, and not that concerned. I mean, I don't think as concerned. I mean, I think that more in the Tim Cook years than in the Steve Jobs years, but not as worried about the stock market or their stock price or whatever. I think that Tim Cook pays more attention to it. I think that's why we have stock buybacks and all those other things. I think Steve was just like, we're just going to make our products, and if people want to get on the road, if they want to get on in the car, they can get in the car. If they don't want to be in the car, they can get out of the car. I think that was kind of his approach to it. But I think it was also when Apple was in a heavy growth phase, which is maybe different. I mean, but although it doesn't feel like it, I mean, I don't know what their value is today, but it felt like once they crossed over the threshold of $1 trillion, they just kept on accelerating.
I also think that modern day CEOs, when they, get edged out for whatever reason, founders, not CEOs, but founders, if they get edged out, they're always doing this whole I'll be back, like Steve Jobs. But I don't know if, none of them were Steve Jobs. I knew Steve Jobs, and you're not Steve Jobs. I didn't know Steve Jobs, but
All right, so we've got our picks coming up, so everyone start to line up your picks. But before that, Leo's got one last thing to talk about.
One last interruption before we go on with the rest of MacBreak Weekly, our picks of the week, I presume. But first, a word from ZipRecruiter. Hiring is tough. If you're the person doing it, it's really tough because you're down a person and you've got so you're going to work harder, right? This is what happened to Lisa when we lost our accounting manager. This was a couple of months ago. She was dreading it because, if we don't find somebody in 2 weeks, Lisa's doing all the work. This was at breakfast. I said, hey, we do these ads for ZipRecruiter. Why don't you try them? I think we'd used them before. I know we'd used them before, but Lisa said, oh, yeah. So she put the job posting up. Now, a couple of things happen right away. First of all, ZipRecruiter posts to 100-plus job boards, Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. So your listing's immediately out there. And that helps because you don't know which job board the right person's at. You want to get to everywhere. But then they do something else that I don't think anybody else does, and this is huge. They have already millions of resumes in the system. They use AI, they use machine learning, a powerful matching technology to look at these resumes and find people that fit the job posting you just put up and then invite them to apply. They don't just give it to you, but they say, hey, Lisa and Leo are looking for somebody with exactly your skills. Apply here. Person applies, goes right into the ZipRecruiter interface, which I like. They format the resumes so it's easy to read. They give you screening questions so you can eliminate people without any work if they don't meet your needs. But what's great is you start getting those names, those applicants right away. In fact, we did this at breakfast. About an hour later, Lisa looks at her ZipRecruiter interface, and go, oh, this one's good. I got one. That was fast. Another one, and by lunch we had 3, 4, 5. Bunch of very good qualified applicants. In fact, it turns out over 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter will get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. We got them within 5 hours. It was amazing. You got to try this. And you can do it free right now. No wonder ZipRecruiter is the highest rated hiring site in America. Try it free. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. Do it now, and maybe by dinner you'll have somebody. It really helped us a lot. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. I kind of like them because they made my wife happy. ZipRecruiter.com/MacBreak. Now back to MacBreak Weekly.
All right. So we're on for our picks for the week. Megan, what's your pick?
Okay. Have you used Lifesum, the app Lifesum?
No.
I had used it a while ago. It's sort of like MyFitnessPal, where you can, write down everything that you've eaten and somehow magically lose weight by doing that. But
I put it in there, it just exists.
I reheard about it in the Apple event. They talked about it there being a Lifesum complication. I was like, I'll try that again. And so what I like about it is, like MyFitnessPal, you add foods, but this one includes a picture. So if I want to, I'm in the add food. So let's say I'm having a snack and I can take a picture of it. So now with MyFitnessPal and all the other ones, of course you can, take a picture of the barcode, and that's old. So I'll take a picture of these sour cream and onion potato chips, and then it's gonna figure out what it is, and deep analysis of the photo, and whipped cream, no. Vanilla cookies, no. White cake, no. Milk chocolate, no.
This thing is amazing.
More suggestions. Potato chips. See? Potato chips. It came up. It's weird because it feels like it should have read the words, but then I can add the potato chips on there. But what it can also do is take a plate of food. So I'm going to just dump these right on the table. Sorry, John. Let's see if it... You can eat one.
Hey.
Okay, let's see if it recognizes. Okay, so that was a snack. I'll have this for lunch, and I'll take the picture. And let's see if it recognizes what those are. That is one yummy picture, it says. Sure is Lifesum. Looks pretty tasty. Salt, chicken breast with skin, white fish, mushrooms, ravioli, and tomato sauce. Let's try that again.
Well, it kind of makes you hungry for a much more substantial snack.
Yeah. So that salt, yes. And was potatoes one of them? Okay, so usually it has worked. I did have some salt. Let's try that again from a different. Let's make it think it's a snack.
See, I think a lot of these apps are really useful if I really decide I'm going to use them, because it's just such a pain to put something in that you just don't want to eat. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to input this, and I don't feel like doing it.
Potato chips. It got it that time. Potato chips. So then I can. I had potato chips, one bag, and then I don't have to, write all the calories. It's true that it is a pain. So I've started using this again, and it's a subscription, and I went ahead and paid the whole $47 for the year because, like a gym membership, now I'm going to actually use it and record. It connects.
that always works.
It always works every time. And noted, this is my own money. Leo's not paying for it. So that's another reason why. That phone, Leo's paying for it. I will use it.
So it tells you how many calories.
Yeah, it tells you. Oh, yeah, and it then it works the rest of the way like my Fitness Pal would work, and then it says I should have a certain amount of calories per day, and it has meal plans, so it can do recipes. I answered this whole thing, and it told me that I should do 2 days of fasting, which I might do. I don't know. Have you fasted?
I have. I like it.
You do?
I don't like doing like the I like the water fruit kind of thing on a day. I definitely feel a lot better. I mean, generally, I think I've gotten to the point where I think you get to a certain age where you stop eating because it tastes good and you start eating because you feel good after you ate it. Like it's, and so if I don't feel good after I eat something, I kind of check that off the list. Every once in a while, like love Ethiopian food and Indian food, but won't eat it very often because I just know I don't do well. And and which leaves you mostly with, salads and eggs.
But you cook an omelet every morning. You inspired me. We did this segment together on cooking, and you make a different omelet every morning.
I do. Right now I'm into fluffy, really like foam omelets, which it took me a little while to get the right blender for it, but I like almost build the omelet into a meringue, and then you cook it for 90 seconds and put some butter under it, and you cook it some more, and then you flip it, and it comes out. And it looks like you can see, if you go to my Instagram, you'll see a picture of my first try at it. Soon I'm going to put another try on because I've made 20 since that picture. So.
Well, I was going to buy the sous vide, but that felt like too much of a jump for me. So I bought the Instapot, and it's hard to cook. I decided I was going to make vegetable broth in the Instapot. And so I got 4 leeks. I cut up the parsley, the things that look like carrots but are white, turnips, parsnips. Yeah, like all that stuff. And then you're supposed to just throw all that stuff away, and just have the broth. And that didn't make any sense to me at all. So
I have a friend that makes a lot of broths. And there's the picture of the foamy. That's the foamy. That's my first try at it. They're better now, but that one is the first fry. And I was watching. What happens is I watch a lot of YouTube pictures on YouTube videos on omelets. I don't know why. I just
that's okay.
For a while it was breakfast sandwiches. I make my kids breakfast sandwiches, but I kind of got that one pretty mastered. So I saw Jamie Oliver was talking to some French guy, and then you start searching foamy omelets, and you end up with all these ones in Japan and ones in France, and then you watch them all doing it by hand, and you try to do it by hand, and you're like, this is crazy. We have technology for this. And people love them. And so anyway.
Wait, you were talking about the friend you have who makes vegetable broth.
Tons of broth, and all she does is while she's cooking, she just throws all the stuff away. She just throws stuff into the pot. The pot's boiling, and she throws whatever she's making, she just starts throwing stuff in there. So it's not like she's throwing that away. She's taking the extra stuff and just throwing it in. And that's kind of how she does it. And the broth is really good.
So I should just eat the vegetables and still have the broth. I can separate the vegetables.
It seems like it's just something that's done in parallel to just regular cooking.
Okay.
You have to cook a lot.
Gravy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gravy.
Or afterwards, if you
exactly.
roasted chicken.
I don't know how
roast
we got
the chicken, then throw it in.
We started with counting calories, and then we got to the Instapot.
Okay, that's my pick.
That's the pick.
Lifesum. There's a free version, and it has ads, and it still includes the camera, but it doesn't include a lot of the other fancy features. And you won't use it unless you pay for it. That's what I decided.
It's true.
And I still might not use it, even though I paid for it.
You just feel a little bad about it. It'll just be, Andy, what's your pick for the week?
Well, to bring the conversation back to Apple, I was watching my Apple TV, the segment that you did, and I noticed that when you were searing the steak after you sous vide'd it, you didn't use a searsol. Were you using just like the raw nozzle of the butane torch, or did you have something special?
I was. It was better TV. It was. So the thing is, the searsol isn't exciting to look at.
Yeah, true.
That was the decision. The decision I made was to leave the searsol off because it actually tastes better with the searsol on it. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned the searsol in the show, but I didn't think when I tested it, I was like, I don't think this is going to look good on TV. It's going to look like I'm waving something magic over it rather than just finding it out.
Because when you are on that long list of people that when you do something that confuses me, my first go-to reaction is he must know something I don't know. I must learn what he knows. He must have something that came out that's much better than the Sears All that looks so cool.
It just looks cooler than the Sears All, and it doesn't bother. Like some people don't like the taste of if you actually put the flame on it, and it doesn't bother me. So I actually kind of like it. There's certain things that I like to use it for that I taste it, and it's not. I don't always use the Sears All either. So
that's the advantage of Sweet Lady Propane. You taste the meat, not the heat. Okay, my pick of the week actually dovetails into all the updates that we've had this week. My favorite to-do productivity project management app for Apple devices is Things. It is not just is not only like probably the only bespoke app for project management, getting things done to-do list that I've actually stuck with, because it didn't make me learn. Now, first of all, normal if in an old-fashioned to-do list, you just write down buy light bulbs. But our app is so sophisticated and is so much more productive, because first, tell me what the context of buying the light bulb is. It could be the light bulb is in the kitchen, so the context is in the kitchen, or maybe it's a home. Like I just want light bulbs. Just remind me to get light bulbs. All the way up to I'm writing a 400-page book and I'm managing like 4 people who are working for me to like do layout and stuff like that, and their deadlines that people can get real scoldy at me if I don't do things right. It's not only a really great app for all kinds of stuff like that, it's also a legitimately beautifully done app. Whether you've got the desktop app or the iPhone app or the iPad app, it is the sort of thing where it is one of the most perfect explanations of why iOS needs to exist, because it really is a way of presenting user interface and a way of interacting with the user's brain that is unique to iOS and is unique to Apple. It would be impossible. I wish that they had an Android version of this for my Android phone, but they just could not make it work. They would have to duplicate everything that Apple has done with all their APIs and all their interfaces. And they've just updated it to version 3.7 to take advantage of all the new features in iOS 12 and watchOS 5. So, for instance, if you've got the new watchOS 5, new complications, it can now project your data, your to-dos, your checklist, your things like that inside that complication, inside the watch face. That's nice. And you can also interact with the watch. That's great. But the really cool thing is it'll take advantage of things like it'll work on your phone in landscape mode. But the big thing is that it'll work with Siri Shortcuts. So it really is the sort of thing where you can take this really complicated thing, like at the very end, when I'm working on a book, it is like when I was using this as my project management app, it really is at the end of the day, making sure I keep that big tote board completely up to date and saying that anything that did not get done has to be moved over here. But if it is related to this person here with this tag, that means I have to move it into a personnel list. And I also have to make sure that I email this both to a backup site, but also remind myself tomorrow morning of something that was really important that didn't get done. All the stuff that is repeatable thing that I'm supposed to do every single night to keep myself in line. You can just simply now create a workflow for it, and will just automatically get done. And it will also work with the Shlomo. So you can, if there's for instance, on your watch or on your phone, if there is, there are a lot of apps that will let you add to a to-do list or add to a named to-do list, but you can actually build a somewhat sophisticated Shlomo shortcut when it's something like you're walking through a building that you're renovating, and you need to do a punch. You're doing punch lists for things that the carpenters need to know about, things that the plumbers need to know about, things that the decorator needs to know about. And now you can use Shlomo to simply make sure that not only things go to the correct lists by creating, in a sense, a custom Shlomo command, but also making sure it does more than one thing to it. It is gorgeous. Now, the only drawback is that this isn't one of those things where you buy one copy and you get free everything else. The Mac app, I think, is like $40. Which is correct for a professional app that will save you this much aggravation. If you want it on your phone, it will cost you another like $10 or something. If you want it on your iPad as well, and it's also a gorgeous iPad app as well, you have to give them another $20. But you can download the Mac version for free. And if you make the mistake of using it for a full week, you'll be like, damn it, I'm going to have to give them $40 for this app because I don't want to stop using it. And then 2 weeks after that, you'll be like, I wish I could do this on my phone. Damn it, I got to give them another $10 for the phone version because it's just too damn useful. It's like what we're talking about how there's a weird pleasure we get from being able to say, hey, person who created this album, I really like this album. Here, have some money. That kind of we're kind of wired up to make that transaction of it's not enough for me to simply tweet and at sign you inside the tweet to say, hi, I just streamed your album for free. Thank you. I really enjoyed it. But here is some money. I'm buying a $40 t-shirt, not because I want it, but because I want you to have $40. I want to put $40 in your hand. That's the sort of satisfaction you get when you buy apps of this quality. It really is just absolutely gorgeous, and I can't say enough things about it. So the company's cultured code, and really, if I could authorize a federal grant so that they can continue to do work like this, I would do really it. It would be a National Endowment for the Arts grant. It's just such a beautiful app.
That's great. Yeah, I use that as well. So it's
you do?
It's really cool. Yeah.
Have you tried Agenda, that app?
I have it. I just wasn't as happy with it as I was with things.
I've tried all of them.
I have them all.
You do wind up trying all of them, don't you? Mm-hmm. You never, even with the one you like, you're always looking for more.
Everyone's.
Yeah.
Adam, what do you have for us?
I've got two things. One, I work at a standing desk, and I just ran across this in Amazon. Hopefully, pull up the anti-fatigue mat. Scroll down just a little bit here, and you'll see the price new from $129,999. Or you can get a 2-pack for $37.95. So I just the best anti-fatigue mat in the world. Please, just buy one. Just buy one. Just buy one.
Yes, we have two different versions. I think you want the Colombian design, sir. the Colombian design.
It would be funny if it turned out that was some kind of weird money laundering thing that they figured out how to use Amazon to buy buy these little stress-free mats, and that's how they're moving money out of Saudi Arabia or something like that.
Or it's something like the mat costs $100,000, but the incredibly elite sex worker comes and delivers it for you and makes love to you for 14 hours for free.
Well, look at the gift card savings, $10, so it's only $129,989.
And if you sign up for an Amazon, they'll give you a $70 credit, so it'll actually be $129,929.
How far? Leo,
that'll teach him to go on vacation during September, during a busy month.
You bought you this really nice mat to stand on.
It's really nice.
Right, yes.
Okay, so anyway, my real pick of the week. This is a beta, but it's a public beta. It's Affinity Publisher, and I'm an InDesign fan. I've used InDesign for a bunch of years. I've written whole books in InDesign. I like InDesign. But I understand that people are put out about Creative Cloud subscriptions and things like that. And so when I saw the announcement of Affinity Publisher, I thought, what the heck? I'll download it. I'll take a look. And I had to lay out something, so I was like, I'll try this thing I want to lay out. It's pretty good. I mean, it's a beta. They're very upfront about how they're still fixing things and adding features and whatnot, but it's pretty good. And as someone who knows InDesign relatively well, where I mostly tripped up was in trying to find how to, get tabs. Like where's the ruler that will let me, adjust my tabs, or where's the, where are different things. And then obviously some of the keyboard shortcuts were a little different. So I was, the ingrained spinal cord motions for how to do things in InDesign didn't always work. But I was pretty impressed. And, I think they're aiming for end of the year for actual release. But for someone who needs the power of InDesign or close to the power of InDesign and doesn't wish to pay up for a full Creative Cloud subscription, it's pretty impressive. Master pages, full styles, tables, all kinds of stuff. I was pretty impressed.
That's great.
How much does it cost?
It's in beta, so they haven't actually said, I don't think. But if you look, they also have Affinity, Affinity Photo and Affinity Affinity Designer. It's sort of, I think they're actually kind of going for the full, let's compete with Creative Cloud. Mm-hmm. And maybe you can find what the prices are on those. I want to say that they're relatively inexpensive.
Yeah, I feel like it's like $20 or something.
I was going to say much like 50, but still,
somewhere in that range. And
in the less than $50 a month.
Yeah. Well, and I know for photo, I use it specifically for one thing. So I don't know how to use most of it, but it lets you go into a VR mode to paint out the tripod. And you can paint it because otherwise you have this kind of crazy thing at the bottom of your 360 photo, that just is all stretched out over the Mercator projection. So it puts it back in a sphere, and you can look down and paint it out really quickly and easily, and it looks great. And for me, that was worth the price of admission. Like I just have it because I couldn't find it anywhere else to be able to do that. And so I use it for that one. I use their photo one for that tool. I have the other ones because I keep on buying them because I keep on going, this is a great idea. And the hard part that you pointed out was there's so many muscle memory things. Like for me, for Photoshop, I've been using Photoshop since before they had alpha channels, and before they had layers. They had alpha channels, but they didn't have layers, and so I remember that being really exciting. It was like 19. It was like, oh my gosh, you don't have to do this crazy set of operations to put something on top of something else. So anyway, but I have to admit that if I do less than 4 or 5 pages, which is about the most I ever lay out anymore, I've gotten really good at Pages. What do you think of? Have you done any layout in Pages?
Every now and then I play with it. And
it's like, you silly boy. What were you thinking?
Well, so what I want to say is that there are 2 classes of layout apps, and I'm not a huge expert in this. I actually like doing layout. I don't get to do very much of it. But there's the high end stuff, the InDesigns and this Affinity Publisher and whatnot, where they're really assuming that you're going to be doing, very fine adjustments. You're going to be doing longer documents possibly. And then there's what I want to call the brochure tools, Pages, Swift Publisher, Belight's Printworks. They tend to be more aimed at, you want a business card or you want a trifold flyer, and we can help you do that. And those are great. Don't get me wrong. If you want a trifold flyer, that's probably going to be way easier than trying to set up your guides in InDesign.
Yep.
And so I feel like that's the separation, and Pages for me falls into that category of, if I need to print a birthday card for someone, I'm going to pull up Pages and throw a picture on and some text and print.
And I came from 5 hard years of Quark Express of publishing, of ads and publishing. I built a whole magazine that was run from all the ads and classified were all run from a FileMaker document that we scripted into the processed it into the system. So it's not, I don't come completely flat-footed into the thing, and I just know that I don't do that anymore. And I don't know why I would do that, because then I would print it on paper, and I don't know when I would. Because all I send people is PDFs. Here's a PDF of all I do is proposals, and so it's either
where I got back into InDesign. I do volunteer with a local running club, and even though pretty much everything is online, we still feel like we need printouts of race entry forms, and and these things had been, they were all in Word. They'd been looked like they'd been designed by squirrels in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly.
And so at some point I said, look, I can just fix this. I'll redesign. We'll have a template. It'll look good. And so I got to play with InDesign again for a while with these things, and it was just fun. And so, yes, I actually do print them, and we do have PDFs, and that is probably the thing that I spend the most time doing in InDesign. And it's just, it is just an excuse. And, and as you say, those muscle memory things, I started using it again after not using it for years, and suddenly my hands did the right thing.
I know, exactly.
Scary. I don't even know what this command is, and I'm doing it.
I know. Photoshop is like that. It's very much like that. If I want to copy a layer or whatever, I couldn't even tell you what the keystroke is. My fingers know what it is. I don't know what it is anymore. And it has to be contextual. I couldn't tell you until I needed to do it, and my finger just goes and does it, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's what I wanted. So, anyway,
Adam, as a non-professional, I would love to have clarification on one point. Which do you think was the overriding preponderating element of that design template? The taste of the squirrel, or the 1980s design cues. I'm trying to figure out if there was a lot of like checkerboard patterns and like neon squiggles, or whether there was just a lot of like things about nuts.
I think it was more
a lot of hyperactive typesetting with a lot of font changes.
And were squirrels in the 80s different than they are now?
Well, what it was is basically, so you'd do this race for them, and it would, and have where the race is.
They were really into ska for one.
And then every time someone would make a mistake or get confused, the next year the race director would bold it or put it in all caps or make it red. And this continued over decades. Until, they really looked like ransom notes. That's why the squirrels was like, you could imagine squirrels kind of like, with little paws on the mouse and, like, I think this will be good if we make it red, It's like, it's just, they were just, and every one of them was completely different too. So, like you'd get these things and it was like a reading exercise to figure out when the race started.
Well, and I know I talked to a client one time and they had all this bold stuff and underlines, and I said, so why are you doing that? And they're like, because we want it, because that's a special part. That's important. And I was like, what about this part? That's important too. And I said, have you ever seen The Incredibles? And he's like, and he looked at me like, huh? And I was like, because when everybody's special, then no one is. and so I was just like, you can't, like you got to make a decision about what's going to be special, and then have everything else just kind of back up a little bit, So anyway, my daughter she's 9 years old, and of course I'm giving her Keynote because I build decks, a lot of decks. So we're doing Keynote training, and part of it was one font. One font. This is white space. There's a thing called center that we want to use.
You're crushing her creativity.
She's very creative, but we just want to like fit into a little bit of the model. So anyway, my pick for the week is it's the MixPre by Sound Devices. This is the MixPre-3. There's also a MixPre-6 and a MixPre-10. And if you're looking for the best interface you're ever going to have into your computer that happens to also record, that also happens to have the best preamps ever. And by the way, if you're wondering what a preamp is, that is when you plug your mic into your recorder, the circuitry that records that actually is half the deal. The mic, the Heil mic is great, but what it goes through before it goes to the recorder is a huge deal. And almost everything you get when you don't spend real money or you just kind of buy it, it's cheap, it affects the quality of it, and it peaks, and it does all these other horrible things to your audio. This along with a good mic is probably the biggest investment that you'll make if you're doing podcasts or you're doing anything that requires audio. This is probably the most important investment that you'll make, is what are you going to record and what is going to interface into your computer. And the great thing is you don't have to buy two different things. Now, we used to have USB Pre-2s, which Sound Devices also makes, and where they come from. This is a much less expensive piece than what Sound Devices has done in the past. They are the industry standard in the movie industry. This is what you look at. I'm friends with a lot of sound recordists on Facebook, a couple hundred, and you see all their behind the scenes pictures, and all you see is Sound Devices. Not, and these are these big 788s and 664s, and these much more expensive pieces. But what they did is they made it more cost effective and gave you a USB interface, and so you can get those tracks into your computer, so you can use it as the interface for your podcast or a Skype call or whatever. But it's going to sound really good, and you just push record, and rather than trying to figure out how you're going to use Audio Hijack or whatever you're going to do, you're just going to push record, and you're going to record it, and it's going to be an incredibly good recording of what you're doing. And no matter how loud you go, you can peak the mic, but you can't peak the it's got limiters in it, and you can't really peak the recorder. They just released the ability now to you can use little control surfaces. So one of the problems is you got those little dials, and it used to be kind of difficult to kind of get control of that. They now have support for the Nano Control Studio, Nano Control 2, Novation's Launch Control, and Akai's MIDI Mix, which means that in the USB, you can plug in these relatively inexpensive little boards with sliders, and so you can control the different. You can control the all the channels independently. The interface is a lot better. It's just a great. It's an amazing piece of hardware. And so, what were you saying, Andy?
I just want to throw in my opinion as someone who is, unlike Alex, not an expert on digital media and not an expert on microphones and not an expert on this sort of stuff. Just as a dude who thank God Almighty makes money off of podcasts and recording things. It's so simple. It's so satisfying to simply touch a button marked record, as opposed to running Audio Hijack works great, and it costs a lot less than this. But to touch a button marked record and know that your audio is not only going through Skype, but it's also being recorded at very, very high resolution to an SD card. And when you're doing like field recordings and field interviews, not only to see, to know that you're getting beautiful, beautiful audio, that you're seeing color LEDs, a color screen that is doing number things, the numbers getting higher, and LED and VU meters going this way to confirm that you are indeed recording, and also that your subject who accepted the request for an interview basically because they're a very nice person, but then and thought you're kind of a nerd, but once you show up with like something with, oh wow, there's a box here with metal metal studs on it and like that screen with VU meters, this guy must be a professional. Okay, I'm not gonna be a jerk to him. I'm gonna tell him all the great stories. Yeah, it's wonderful. I had one on loan for a couple of months. I had to send it back when I was done with the review, and as soon as I get some mad money together, that's probably the next thing I'm buying for the studio. It was such a treat having this box. It's
just a great box, and again, it plugs into, like, if you have, it'll actually plug into your iPhone if you want to, into the jack. You can get a little cable for it, and but you can also plug it into if you have a SLR and has a little audio jack in. All those things are things that putting it even if you have mic inputs on your camera, you should use this instead, because it's going to sound better. And the thing with, even if you're doing video for YouTube or something, or any kind of video, audio is more important. It's not 50%, it's 80% of the product, because people will look through a lot of bad video and then they'll kind of put up with frame rate issues and everything else. You have bad audio, no one wants to listen to you. So anyway, so it's all of them are good. The new 6 and 10, I think, or the 10 and the 6, the MixPre 6 and 10, I think now support the Ambio mic, which is the VR mic, which I have one, and I needed something more portable to get it, so I'm probably going to get those ones too. Anyway, great. So anyway, that's it. I think we've gone a little longer than I expected. When I laid this out, I was like, I hope this actually goes for an hour and a half. I don't know if this is going to work.
That's okay. We also got an episode of our Nerds Cooking podcast in. Just cut out that 23 minutes and sell a couple of ads for that one.
Exactly.
Oh, come on. I didn't get to talk about pickles. I've been making pickles. I was almost going to do that as my pickle of the week. Sorry.
I think the show should have a pickle of the week.
That'd be good. Adam, where can people find you?
Tidbits.com is where you can find pretty much everything I do. We've been covering a lot of this new stuff, and the site is completely redesigned, as I think since the last time I've been here. So people should come over and take a look. It doesn't look like it was designed by squirrels in the 2000s anymore.
Andy, where can people find you?
As usual, spell my last name. I'm at Anatko on Twitter, Anatko on Instagram. My blog is Anatko. And let's see, I'm going to be on WGBH Boston Public Radio every couple of weeks, talking for a half hour on tech. Next one is on Friday, I think at 11:30. Go to www.gbhnews.org to stream it or listen to it later. Or you can show up at the Boston Public Library. We have a studio actually there at the library with a coffee shop attached, so you can actually watch me live and pretend and make sure you tweet to people that he did not have pages of notes in front of me. He just remembered all those names and quotes and dates just right out of his head. And also check out, if you're into opera, check out McSweeney's.net. I've got a humor piece finally sold a piece to McSweeney's. I've been trying for like 4, 5, 6 times for years. But yes, I've got a piece about the Metropolitan Opera that they tell me is going to run on Monday, because it's the start of the Metropolitan Opera season.
All right. And Megan, where can people find you? I know you're not, you're just
find
always
me right
hidden.
here.
Right here.
In this room where I've been since 8:30 this morning, a.m., so 6-7 hours.
Like, I'm never doing this. When Alex says come in, I didn't expect it to be 2.5 hours.
Also, I learned this from Rich DeMuro, who was from KTLA. I've been starting to put every link of things that I've talked about on my website, which seems obvious as I started as a web producer in Tech TV. But there's really not one place. And so MeganMaroney.com, or you can get there by going to goatswearingclothes.com, which will redirect. Everything I talk about is there. I'm going to keep it up.
Will we get the story behind the name? Because I'm headed there right now.
At least the goats are wearing clothes.
The story is that there was like a video of goats wearing clothes like 3 years ago, and I was like, this is adorable. I'm going to create a website all about this. And then I bought the URL.
Goats all the time.
And then I just decided to redirect it until I decide to really create the true, give it the goats wearing clothes videos it needs.
Until you got goats.
Yeah.
You have to get your own goats and start knitting them clothes.
Is that the one with the little goats? The little goats running around with the little sweaters?
Yeah. It's cute. I mean, everyone thinks that's cute, right? And I hope that's the last thing I tweet, the pictures of the goats wearing clothes when I die.
I like this. It's sort of the dead man switch on social media, right? As soon as I let go, tweet this, post that.
I think so.
Post the unofficial memoir that I didn't want to tell anybody.
Right.
This guy did this to me.
It's going to go. It's the rant. It's like, and I've been meaning to say.
All right, everybody, back to work because break time is over.